Hello and welcome to Potter Paradox, your home for amazing stories. Today's story is What If Harry Was Raised by Aragorn in Middle-earth? Epic fantasy. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe if you haven't already. We post new stories regularly. Let's get started. Chapter 1, The Ranger's Son. The orc's blade whistled past Harry's ear, missing by less than an inch. 17 winters had toughened him into a fighter worthy of the Rangers, but nothing quite matched the rush of actual combat. He ducked beneath a second swing, feeling the familiar surge building in his veins, that dangerous, unpredictable power that always chose the worst moments to appear. Not now, he muttered, pivoting on his heel and driving his sword up through the creature's exposed flank. The blade connected with a satisfying thunk, and the orc crumpled with a pained shriek. Aragorn fought nearby, his movements fluid and precise as he dispatched two orcs with practiced efficiency. Harry had spent his life trying to match his adoptive father's skill, but the man still moved like water while Harry felt more like a determined boulder, effective but lacking grace. "Harry! On your left!" Aragorn called. Harry spun just as another orc charged from the underbrush. He raised his sword, but fatigue slowed his reaction. The creature's jagged blade came slicing toward his throat, the surge inside him exploded outward. A blinding flash erupted from Harry's outstretched hand, and the orc flew backward, smashing into a tree with bone-crushing force. Silence fell across the forest clearing. Harry's heart hammered against his ribs. The familiar tingling sensation raced along his fingers and up his arm, fading gradually as it always did after these incidents. Aragorn approached cautiously, wiping black blood from his blade. "That's the third time this month. I didn't mean to." Harry flexed his fingers, the lingering sensation both exhilarating and terrifying. "It just happens." His father's weathered face showed no fear, never fear, but concern etched deeper lines around his eyes. "The frequency is increasing." Harry knew what that meant. The unspoken conversation they'd been avoiding for weeks hung in the air between them. They needed to seek answers, which meant only one destination. "Rivendell?" Harry asked, already knowing the answer. Aragorn nodded, surveying the carnage around them. "We've tracked this band for 3 days. Their camp must be nearby. We'll finish this task, then make for Elrond's house." He clasped Harry's shoulder. "It's time." Harry nodded, trying to ignore the knot forming in his stomach. Rivendell meant Gandalf. Gandalf meant questions about his nature that he wasn't sure he wanted answered. They followed the tracks deeper into the forest, moving with the quiet efficiency that marked the Dunedain. Though Harry lacked Aragorn's bloodline, he'd absorbed every lesson on woodcraft, tracking, and survival. This was the only life he'd known: tracking, hunting, protecting the borders, while the peaceful folk of Middle-earth remained blissfully unaware of the dangers that lurked in the wild. The orc camp appeared through the trees, crude tents and a smoldering fire surrounded by a dozen of the creatures. Aragorn signaled silently, and Harry moved to the position they'd used countless times before. They would strike from opposite sides, creating confusion. Harry nocked an arrow, steadied his breathing, and waited for Aragorn's signal. When it came, his first arrow found an orc's throat before the creature could even register the attack. His second and third followed in quick succession, dropping 2 more as Aragorn emerged from the opposite tree line, sword flashing. Harry drew his own blade and charged, the familiar battle rhythm taking over. Strike, parry, spin, thrust. The hours of training hardened into muscle memory as he fought alongside the man who'd raised him from infancy. An orc commander, larger than the others with crude armor pieced together from previous victims, roared in challenge, swinging a massive cleaver toward Aragorn's exposed back. "Father!" Harry shouted, too far away to intercept. The panic triggered it again. Without conscious thought, Harry extended his hand, and a jet of red light shot from his palm, striking the orc commander squarely in the chest. The creature seized up, rigid as stone, before collapsing face-first into the dirt. The remaining orcs broke and fled, their courage evaporating at this display of unnatural power. Aragorn turned, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the fallen commander and then Harry's still outstretched hand. Harry began, but found no words to explain what he himself didn't understand. "We leave for Rivendell at first light," Aragorn said firmly, wiping his blade clean. They made camp several miles from the orc site, in a small cave tucked into a hillside that offered protection and concealment. The crackling fire cast dancing shadows across the stone walls as Harry prepared their meager dinner, coney caught in snares set earlier and wild onions he'd spotted during their trek. "You've been quiet," Harry finally said, breaking the silence as he handed a portion to Aragorn. The ranger accepted the food with a nod of thanks. "I'm remembering the first time it happened." Harry settled across from him, the familiar story a comfort despite the circumstances. "The wolves." "You weren't yet 5 winters," Aragorn confirmed, a rare smile softening his features. "We were trapped in that abandoned shepherd's hut during the worst blizzard I'd seen in decades. The pack had tracked us for days." Harry could almost see it, the howling wind, the splintering door, the yellow eyes gleaming in the darkness. "You killed 3 before they overwhelmed you. And then my tiny son, barely tall enough to reach my belt, screamed and every wolf was thrown backward as if struck by a battering ram." Aragorn's eyes reflected the firelight. "That was when I knew for certain you were not merely a lost child of men." Harry absently traced the lightning-shaped scar on his forehead, the mark he'd borne since before Aragorn found him. "Yet you kept me anyway." "You were mine from the moment I found you," Aragorn said simply. "Whatever mysteries surrounded your arrival, you were a child who needed protection. Everything else was secondary." The memory surfaced as it always did, not Harry's own, but told so often it felt like remembering, Aragorn tracking strange lights in the trollshaws. The scorched circle in the forest clearing. The bundle wrapped in strange fabric unlike any weave of Middle-earth. The infant with emerald eyes and the curious lightning mark, clutching a splintered wooden stick that hummed with power when touched. "Do you still have it?" Harry asked. "The stick?" Aragorn reached into his pack and withdrew a cloth-wrapped bundle. He unwrapped it carefully to reveal the broken wooden rod, 10 inches of polished wood with strange symbols carved into its surface. The broken end still showed splintering, as though it had been snapped by great force. Harry had examined it countless times throughout his childhood, always feeling a strange affinity for the object without understanding why. Whenever he held it, the surges inside him seemed to calm, almost as though the wood recognized him. "I've often wondered if finding you was chance or fate," Aragorn said quietly, rewrapping the stick. "Gandalf believes nothing happens without purpose in this world." "And what do you believe?" Harry asked. Aragorn's gaze was steady. "I believe you were meant to be my son, regardless of where you came from. But I also believe we must understand your abilities before they grow beyond your control." Harry nodded, staring into the flames. The incidents had grown more frequent and more powerful. What had once been rare occurrences that manifested only in moments of extreme danger now appeared during minor skirmishes or even when his emotions ran high. "What if they discover I'm something wrong?" He finally voiced the fear that had haunted him for years. "You are not wrong, Harry." Aragorn's voice carried absolute conviction. "You are different, yes, but there is no evil in you. I've watched you grow from an infant into a man any father would be proud to call son. Whatever answers await in Rivendell, remember who you are, not just what you can do." Harry nodded, comforted by the faith that had never wavered throughout his life. Whatever came next, he would face it with the courage Aragorn had taught him. "Get some rest," his father said. "I'll take first watch." Harry settled into his bedroll, listening to the night sounds of the wilderness, his home for all the years he could remember. Sleep came gradually, and with it, the dreams that had plagued him with increasing frequency, strange visions of a castle, flashes of green light, and a high, cold laugh that sent shivers through his sleeping form. They'd been traveling for 3 days when Harry first noticed the signs of pursuit. Broken twigs, disturbed underbrush, the occasional footprint not quite concealed, amateur mistakes no ranger would make, but concerning nonetheless. At least 6, he told Aragorn as they paused by a stream to refill their water skins. Keeping their distance but definitely following our trail. Aragorn nodded, his eyes scanning the terrain. Men, not orcs. Orcs wouldn't have the patience for this stalking game. Bandits? Harry suggested, though something felt off about that explanation. Perhaps. Aragorn shouldered his pack. Though bandits typically seek easier targets than 2 armed rangers. They continued northeast, maintaining a steady pace while remaining vigilant. The foothills rose before them, marking the beginning of the mountain paths that would eventually lead to the hidden valley of Imladris, Rivendell in the common tongue. As they made camp that evening, Aragorn made a decision. We'll split up tomorrow. Harry frowned. You think that's wise? I'll leave obvious tracks heading north while you continue east toward Rivendell. I want to know who follows us and why. Aragorn studied the map spread between them. We'll rendezvous here, at the stone ford, in 2 days' time. And if you don't arrive? Harry asked, not liking this plan. Aragorn's smile held grim humor. Then continue to Rivendell and tell Lord Elrond his foster son died a fool's death. Harry snorted. I doubt Lady Arwen would forgive either of us for that outcome. A rare flash of color appeared on Aragorn's cheeks at the mention of Elrond's daughter. Harry hid his smile. His father might be the fearless chieftain of the Dunedain, but the mere mention of the Evenstar reduced him to a tongue-tied youth. Just be careful, Harry added seriously. Whoever these men are, they've tracked us with surprising determination. It's not me I'm concerned about, Aragorn replied. If they somehow know about your abilities, you may be their actual target. The thought hadn't occurred to Harry, though it made a disturbing kind of sense. While his incidents had mostly occurred in remote locations, there had been witnesses over the years, travelers they'd rescued, villagers they'd protected. Word could spread, distorted by retelling. All the more reason we shouldn't separate, Harry argued. All the more reason we should know who hunts us before we reach Rivendell, Aragorn countered. I won't lead unknown enemies to Elrond's doorstep. Harry recognized the tone, the matter was decided. He would follow the plan, no matter his misgivings. The next morning, they parted ways with minimal farewell, the Ranger way. Harry headed east through increasingly rocky terrain while Aragorn veered north, leaving an obvious trail designed to draw their pursuers. Harry moved carefully, utilizing every skill he'd learned to minimize his own tracks. By midday, he'd reached the foothills proper, picking his way through narrow passes and over rocky outcroppings. No signs of pursuit materialized, suggesting Aragorn's diversion had worked. He made camp in a sheltered hollow as dusk approached, eating cold rations to avoid the telltale smoke of a fire. The night passed uneventfully, and he set out again at first light, making good progress toward the rendezvous point. Around midday, he paused near a bubbling spring to refill his water skin. The hair on the back of his neck stood up suddenly, the forest had gone silent. No birdsong, no rustling of small creatures in the underbrush. Just the ominous stillness that meant only one thing, predators. Harry slowly recapped his water skin and rose to his feet, hand resting casually on his sword hilt. He scanned the surrounding trees without making any sudden movements. I know you're there, he called out, deciding directness might be his best option. Show yourselves, and we can discuss whatever business brings you to stalk a lone ranger through the wilderness. Silence stretched for several heartbeats before a man emerged from behind a large oak 20 paces away. He wore travel-stained leathers and carried a bow, though it wasn't drawn. His face bore the weathered look of someone who spent most of his life outdoors, with a prominent scar running from temple to jaw on the right side. Perceptive, the man remarked. Though I'd expect nothing less from the son of Strider. Harry tensed at the use of Aragorn's ranger name. You have me at a disadvantage. The name's Herek. The man made no move to approach closer. I represent interested parties who've heard tales of a young ranger with unusual abilities. 5 more men emerged from hiding positions around the clearing, all armed and moving to form a loose semicircle. Harry noted their positions, calculating escape routes even as he maintained a relaxed posture. "I'm afraid those tales have been exaggerated," Harry replied evenly. "Rangers are skilled woodsmen and fighters, nothing more." Herrick smiled thinly. "Our information comes from reliable sources. A merchant caravan near Bree last autumn, saved from bandits when a young ranger caused a wall of fire to spring from bare ground. A farming village in the Weather Hills where a youth with a lightning scar healed a child dying from fever with just a touch." Harry kept his expression neutral despite the sinking feeling in his gut. Both incidents had occurred, though the descriptions were somewhat embellished. "Interesting stories," he said. "But I'm just a ranger heading to meet my father." "The lightning-marked boy," another man interjected, older with a braided beard. "That's what they call you in the villages. They say you're blessed by the Vala themselves." "Others say cursed," a third added, fingering an amulet around his neck nervously. "Touched by darker powers." Harry's patience thinned. "What do you want from me?" "A demonstration," Herrick said simply. "Prove what you are, and we'll take you to someone very interested in your unique talents. Someone willing to pay handsomely for such gifts." "I'm not for sale," Harry replied coldly. "And you're mistaken about me." Herrick sighed dramatically. "I told my employer you'd be reluctant. That's why we came prepared." He nodded to one of his men, who drew a knife and pressed it against the throat of a sixth figure Harry hadn't noticed, a bound captive shoved forward from behind a boulder. Harry's blood froze. A young girl, no more than 12, with tear-streaked cheeks and terrified eyes. "Village child we found near the road," Herrick explained casually. "Nothing personal, but we needed insurance." Rage boiled inside Harry, the familiar surge building rapidly. "Let her go," he warned, struggling to keep the power contained. "She has nothing to do with this." "Show us what you can do," Herrick countered. "A small demonstration, and she walks free. Refuse, and—" He left the threat hanging. Harry's mind raced. Attacking would endanger the girl. Running wasn't an option. Demonstrating his abilities meant revealing exactly what these men wanted to see, potentially making himself a target for whoever had sent them. "I'll count to 3, Herrick said. 1. "Wait," Harry raised his hands placatingly. 2. The knife pressed harder against the girl's throat, drawing a whimper. The surge exploded outward before Harry could stop it. A blast of pure force erupted from him in all directions, sending all 6 men flying backward. The knife wielder was thrown clear of the girl, who dropped to the ground unharmed but wide-eyed with shock. Harry drew his sword in a fluid motion, advancing on Herrick, who scrambled backward on the ground, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and triumph. "I knew it," the mercenary breathed. "It's real." The others were recovering, reaching for weapons. Harry knew he couldn't fight all 6 while protecting the child. "Run," he shouted to the girl, who needed no further encouragement. She bolted into the trees as Harry engaged the closest mercenary, parrying a wild swing and countering with a slash that opened the man's arm. 2 more rushed him simultaneously. Harry ducked the first attack and blocked the second, but he was quickly being surrounded. The familiar energy surged again, and this time he didn't fight it. He directed it toward the ground at the mercenaries' feet, and the earth erupted upward, sending dirt and rocks flying into their faces. Taking advantage of their momentary blindness, Harry disarmed one with a quick move Aragorn had taught him, sending the man's sword spinning away. The next came in low, and Harry jumped the sweeping blade before landing a kick to the attacker's chest that sent him stumbling backward. Herrick had recovered his bow and knocked an arrow, taking aim from 20 paces away. Harry dove behind a boulder as the shaft whistled past, splintering against stone. "We don't want to kill you, boy," Herrick called. "My employer wants you alive." "Who sent you?" Harry shouted back, using the momentary pause to assess his options. "Someone who understands what you are better than you do yourself," Herrick answered. Someone who can help you control it, master it. Harry doubted that very much. The promise of control was an obvious lure. He peered around the boulder and spotted two mercenaries trying to flank his position while Herrick kept him pinned with the bow. The other three were spreading out, cutting off escape routes. He needed a distraction. Focusing his energy like Aragorn had taught him to focus his mind before a bowshot, Harry directed the building power toward a dead tree at the edge of the clearing. The trunk exploded with a thunderous crack, sending splinters and branches flying. In the ensuing chaos, he broke cover, charging directly at Herrick. The mercenary leader got off one hasty shot that Harry sidestepped before he crashed into the man, sending them both to the ground. Harry's sword went flying, but he managed to land a solid punch that dazed Herrick momentarily. Rolling away, Harry came up with Herrick's dropped knife just as another mercenary reached him. He slashed upward, forcing the man back, then threw the knife with deadly accuracy into the leg of another approaching attacker. A third mercenary tackled him from behind, driving him face first into the dirt. Harry struggled, but the man had weight and leverage. A second mercenary joined, pinning his arms. "Got him," the first called triumphantly. Harry felt the panic rising, the power building to dangerous levels. His vision blurred with it, the energy seeking release. "Bind his hands," Herrick ordered, climbing to his feet with blood streaming from his nose. "Don't let him." The power exploded outward with such force that both men holding Harry were thrown 10 feet into the air. Harry himself was lifted by the backlash, suspended momentarily before dropping back to his knees, gasping. Around him, the mercenaries lay sprawled and groaning. Herrick alone remained conscious, staring at Harry with a mixture of fear and awe. "What are you?" he whispered. Harry retrieved his sword, advancing on the mercenary leader with cold purpose. "I told you. I'm a ranger. Nothing more." He pressed the blade to Herrick's throat. "Who sent you?" Before Herrick could answer, an arrow whispered through the air, embedding itself in the ground between them. Harry looked up to see Aragorn emerging from the tree line, another arrow already knocked. "Step away from my son," Aragorn commanded, his voice carrying quiet authority. Relief flooded Harry, followed quickly by concern. "The girl, safe," Aragorn assured him. "I found her on the path. She's hidden nearby." Herrick laughed despite the sword at his throat. "The great Strider, right on cue. My employer will be disappointed, but not surprised." "Your employer's name?" Aragorn demanded, approaching until his arrow pointed directly at Herrick's heart. "Now. He calls himself Mormonar," Herrick said, the name sending an inexplicable chill down Harry's spine despite never having heard it before. "He seeks those with power beyond the ordinary. Says a storm is coming that will reshape Middle-earth, and he's gathering those who'll weather it." "Where can we find this Mormonar?" Aragorn asked. Herrick shook his head. "He finds you, not the other way around. But he's particularly interested in the boy with the lightning mark. Says he's the key to something important." His eyes fixed on Harry with disturbing intensity. "He knows what you are, where you came from. Says you don't belong to this world at all." Harry felt as though the ground had shifted beneath his feet. What does that mean? But Herrick's cooperation had reached its limit. "Kill me if you must, Ranger, but I've said all I intend to. Mormonar rewards loyalty and punishes betrayal. I fear him more than your blade." Aragorn studied the man for a long moment, then lowered his bow slightly. "We don't kill unarmed men. You'll be bound and taken to the nearest settlement for judgment. For child abduction and attempted kidnapping," Harry added grimly. They secured Herrick and his slowly recovering men, using their own ropes to bind them. The girl, when coaxed from hiding, confirmed she'd been taken from a small farming community 2 days' journey away. "We'll return her home first," Aragorn decided as they prepared to depart. "Then continue to Rivendell with all haste. This Mormonar troubles me, as does his interest in you." Harry nodded, trying not to dwell on Herrick's disturbing words. Says you don't belong to this world at all. The statement echoed in his mind, resonating with feelings he'd carried his entire life, the sense of difference that went beyond his unexplained abilities. Harry, Aragorn said quietly, drawing him from his thoughts. What happened here? Your power is growing stronger. And more uncontrollable, Harry admitted. When they threatened the girl, I couldn't contain it. That anger is understandable, but dangerous. Aragorn clasped his shoulder. We must reach Gandalf quickly. If anyone can help you understand these abilities, it's him. Harry nodded, though anxiety gnawed at him. All his life, he'd known he was different, but he'd still felt he belonged with Aragorn and the Rangers. Now, for the first time, he faced the terrifying possibility that he might truly be something else entirely, something not of Middle-earth at all. After returning the girl to her grateful family, they traveled with increased urgency toward Rivendell. No further pursuit materialized, but neither of them believed they'd seen the last of Mormonar's agents. The journey took them through increasingly dramatic landscapes as they approached the foothills of the Misty Mountains. Harry had visited Rivendell several times throughout his childhood, but not for nearly 5 years. He found himself looking forward to seeing the last homely house despite the circumstances that drove them there. You're unusually quiet, Aragorn observed as they made camp on the 7th night of their journey. Harry prodded the small fire with a stick. Just thinking about what Herrick said. About you not belonging to this world. Aragorn set aside the arrow he'd been fletching. You can't put stock in the words of a mercenary trying to manipulate you. But what if he's right? Harry countered, meeting his father's eyes across the flames. We've always known I'm different. My abilities have no explanation in any lore of Middle-earth, not elven magic, not the wizard's craft. Even the circumstances of how you found me were strange. Aragorn considered this, his face thoughtful in the firelight. It's true there are mysteries surrounding your origin. But remember, Harry, belonging isn't determined by birth or abilities, but by choice and action. You've chosen to protect the free peoples of Middle-earth alongside me. Your actions have always been honorable. That makes you a man of Middle-earth regardless of where you began. The words comforted Harry, though they didn't entirely dispel his unease. Do you think Gandalf will have answers? If anyone might, it would be him. Aragorn resumed his fletching. But prepare yourself for the possibility that some questions may remain unanswered. Harry nodded, appreciating his father's honesty. Aragorn had never fed him comforting lies, even as a child. It was one of the many reasons Harry respected him so deeply. Get some rest, Aragorn advised. We should reach the ford of Bruinen by midday tomorrow, and Rivendell shortly after. Harry settled into his bedroll, staring up at the star-filled sky. The same stars had watched over him his entire life, yet tonight they seemed to hold new questions. Had he once lived under different stars? Was there another world from which he'd somehow been taken or sent? Sleep came reluctantly, and with it, the dreams returned with greater clarity than ever before, a castle silhouetted against a stormy sky, corridors of stone lit by floating candles, a great hall with 4 long tables. A red-haired woman with green eyes like his own, screaming, a flash of green light, and always, that high, cold laugh. He woke with a gasp just before dawn, sweat-soaked despite the cool night air. Aragorn was already awake, watching him with concern. The dream again? His father asked quietly. Harry nodded, sitting up and running a hand through his unruly black hair. Clearer this time. I saw a woman who looked like, she might have been my mother. Aragorn nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps as we draw closer to answers, your dreams grow more revealing. They broke camp efficiently and continued their journey, reaching the ford of Bruinen by midday as Aragorn had predicted. The river marked the boundary of Rivendell's protected lands, and Harry felt a subtle change in the air as they crossed, a sense of peace and timelessness that characterized the elven realms. The path wound upward through wooded slopes until, rounding a bend, the valley of Imladris opened before them. The last homely house gleamed in the afternoon sun, its graceful architecture seeming to grow naturally from the rocky valley walls. Waterfalls cascaded nearby, their constant murmur creating the backdrop of subtle music that always pervaded Rivendell. As they approached the main bridge, an elf appeared to greet them, tall and fair with the ageless quality all his kind possessed. "Aragorn," the elf called warmly. "We had word you were approaching." "Linder," Aragorn clasped the elf's arm in greeting. "You remember my son, Harry?" Linder inclined his head. "Of course. You have grown much since last we met, young one." Harry returned the greeting respectfully, always slightly awed in the presence of the firstborn despite having known many throughout his life. "Lord Elrond awaits you in the main hall," Linder continued, along with Mithrandir, who arrived 3 days past. Harry exchanged a glance with Aragorn at this news. Gandalf, or Mithrandir as the elves called him, had arrived ahead of them, suggesting he already knew something of their situation. They followed Linder across the bridge and through the open, airy corridors of the last homely house. Everywhere, the subtle beauty of elven craft surrounded them, carved railings that mimicked flowing vines, arches that seemed to defy stone's natural properties, tapestries depicting histories so ancient they predated the kingdoms of men. The great hall opened before them, sunlight streaming through high windows to illuminate the space where Elrond half-elven stood in conversation with a grey-robed figure. Both turned as Aragorn and Harry entered. Estel, Elrond greeted Aragorn with the name he'd given him as a child in his house. "And young Harry. You are most welcome, though I sense your arrival is not merely for pleasure." Gandalf the Grey stepped forward, his bushy eyebrows raised as he studied Harry intently. "Indeed. I've been expecting you, though perhaps not quite so soon." Harry met the wizard's penetrating gaze, feeling as though those ancient eyes were seeing far more than his physical presence. There was something oddly familiar about Gandalf's scrutiny, as though he'd experienced similar examination in a forgotten memory. "You've been experiencing increased incidents of power," Gandalf stated rather than asked. "And now others have taken notice." Harry blinked in surprise. "How did you, the wise see many things, young Harry," Gandalf said, his eyes twinkling briefly before growing serious again. "But more importantly, there have been disturbances in the fabric of this world. Ripples of power that do not belong to Middle-earth. I've spent many months tracking these occurrences, and they invariably lead back to you." Elrond gestured toward a smaller adjacent chamber. "Come. This discussion requires privacy and care." They followed him into a study lined with books and scrolls. A map of Middle-earth covered one table, while another held various artifacts Harry couldn't identify. Elrond closed the door behind them and turned to face Harry directly. "Before we begin," the Elf Lord said, "I believe it would help if you showed us the full extent of your recent abilities." Harry glanced at Aragorn, who nodded encouragingly. "I can't always control when or how it happens," Harry warned. "It usually comes during moments of strong emotion or danger." "Try," Gandalf urged gently. "Focus on the feeling just before the power emerges." Harry took a deep breath and closed his eyes, trying to recapture the sensation that preceded his outbursts. The tingling energy, the building pressure, the sense of something rushing up from deep inside him seeking release. He extended his hand toward an empty chair and concentrated. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the chair shuddered and rose several inches off the floor, hovering unsteadily before clattering back down. Harry opened his eyes, feeling drained but exhilarated. He'd never managed to direct his abilities so specifically before. Gandalf's expression was one of profound interest mixed with concern. "Just as I suspected," he murmured. "The power is not of our world at all." Elrond exchanged a significant look with the wizard. "You believe your theory is correct, then?" "I do." Gandalf turned to Aragorn. "Tell me again, precisely, how you found him." Aragorn recounted the tale once more, the strange lights in the Trollshaws 17 years earlier, the scorched circle in the forest clearing, the infant with the lightning scar and the broken wooden rod. "You still have this rod?" Gandalf asked sharply. Aragorn nodded, retrieving the wrapped bundle from his pack and carefully unveiling the splintered wooden stick. Gandalf's breath caught visibly as he reached for it, his weathered hands hovering just above without touching. "May I?" Aragorn nodded, and the wizard gingerly lifted the broken object, examining it with intense concentration. A look of wonder spread across his ancient features. "This is a wand," he declared finally. "A channeling tool for a type of magic entirely different from my own. I have encountered references to such objects only in the most obscure texts describing realms beyond our own." Harry stared at the object with new eyes. "A wand? You mean, like in children's tales?" "Far more than that," Gandalf corrected. "In some worlds, such tools are essential for the wielding of magic. This particular wand." He traced the strange symbols carved into its surface. "These runes are in no language of Middle-earth, yet I sense great power in them." "What does this mean?" Harry asked, his mouth suddenly dry. "Am I truly not from this world?" Gandalf set the broken wand down carefully and fixed Harry with a compassionate gaze. "I believe you come from another realm entirely, one where magic flows differently than it does here. The lightning mark on your forehead is no ordinary scar, it pulses with energies foreign to Middle-earth." "The dreams," Harry said quietly. "The castle, the floating candles, the woman with eyes like mine." "Memories, perhaps," Gandalf suggested. "Or echoes across the boundary between worlds." "But how did I come to be here?" Harry asked, the question that had haunted him his entire life finally given voice. Gandalf and Elrond exchanged another glance before the wizard answered. "I believe you were sent, perhaps to protect you. The scorch marks Aragorn described, the broken wand, they suggest a violent event. Something powerful enough to tear a temporary pathway between realms." Harry sat heavily in a nearby chair, his mind reeling. All his life, he'd known he was different, but this exceeded even his wildest imaginings. "There's more," Elrond said gravely. "In recent months, there have been disturbing reports from across Middle-earth. Strange manifestations of power, objects behaving in ways contrary to their nature, creatures appearing that match no known species of this world. The fabric between realms is thinning," Gandalf added. "I believe your presence here, and more importantly, your growing power, has created a point of weakness between worlds. As your abilities strengthen, so does this connection. And someone has noticed," Aragorn concluded grimly. "This Mormonar that Harek mentioned." Gandalf's expression darkened. "That name troubles me greatly. It is ancient black speech, meaning dark soul or shadow spirit. If such a being is taking interest in the weakening boundaries between worlds, could he use this connection somehow?" Harry asked, dread pooling in his stomach. "That would depend on his nature and abilities," Elrond answered. "But the possibility cannot be discounted." Harry stood suddenly, pacing the room as the implications crashed over him. "So my very existence here is causing damage to Middle-earth? I'm creating a weakness that this Mormonar could exploit?" "Not intentionally," Gandalf corrected firmly. "You bear no blame for circumstances beyond your control." "But it remains true," Harry pressed, looking between them. "As my powers grow stronger, so does this connection between worlds." None of them denied it, which was answer enough. Harry turned to Aragorn, anguish clear in his expression. "All these years, you've protected me, raised me as your son. And in return, I bring this danger to your world." "Our world," Aragorn corrected firmly, rising to place both hands on Harry's shoulders. "Whatever realm you were born to, you have lived and grown in Middle-earth. Your heart belongs to these lands, to its peoples. I have watched you risk your life countless times to protect others. That makes this your world too." Harry's throat tightened with emotion. "But what do I do now? If my powers keep growing, and this connection keeps strengthening?" "We must understand more," Gandalf interjected. "About both your abilities and this Mormonar. Knowledge is our first and best weapon." "I propose this," Elrond said after a moment's consideration. Harry will remain in Rivendell for a time. Here, we can help him learn to control his abilities rather than suppress them. Controlled use might be less damaging than explosive outbursts. Meanwhile, Gandalf continued, Aragorn and I will seek information about Mormonar. I have contacts among the wise who may know something of this being. Harry nodded slowly, seeing the wisdom in the plan despite his reluctance to be separated from Aragorn. Who will teach me? I doubt anyone here has experience with my kind of magic. Actually, a new voice came from the doorway. I believe I might be of some assistance with that. They turned to see Arwen Undamil standing in the entrance, more beautiful than Harry remembered from his last visit years ago. The even star of her people carried herself with quiet grace as she entered the room, inclining her head respectfully to Gandalf and her father. Arwen, Elrond acknowledged, his surprise evident. You were not part of this council. Forgive me, father, she replied, though her tone held no real contrition. But I could not help overhearing. The energies Harry manifests bear similarities to the more subtle magics of our people, not in source, perhaps, but in expression. I have some skill in helping younglings control their emerging abilities. Harry noticed Aragorn's carefully neutral expression at Arwen's arrival and suppressed a smile despite the gravity of the situation. His father's feelings for Elrond's daughter were an open secret to him, if not to others. It's true, Gandalf mused thoughtfully. While elven magic differs fundamentally from what Harry possesses, the principles of focus and control might translate effectively. Elrond did not appear entirely convinced but nodded slowly. Very well. Arwen may begin working with Harry while we gather more information. Harry bowed slightly to Arwen. I would be honored to learn from you, my lady. Her smile contained genuine warmth. The honor is mutual, Harry, son of Aragorn. I have watched you grow from a distance and always sensed you were destined for an unusual path. The gathering concluded with arrangements made for Harry's stay and Aragorn's departure the following day. As they left Elrond's study, Harry felt both overwhelmed by revelations and strangely liberated. For the first time in his life, the mystery of his nature had begun to unravel, even if the answers raised more questions than they resolved. That evening, he stood on one of Rivendell's many balconies, watching stars appear one by one above the peaceful valley. Aragorn joined him in companionable silence, offering a cup of elven wine before leaning against the railing beside him. How are you faring with today's revelations? Aragorn finally asked. Harry considered the question carefully. Better than I expected. There's something, almost relieving about knowing I'm not simply defective in some way. That there's an explanation, even if it's a fantastical one. Aragorn nodded. I've always known you were extraordinary, Harry. From the moment I found you, I sensed you were meant for something important. I'm sorry I won't be traveling with you tomorrow, Harry said after a pause. We've rarely been separated for long. You've grown into a fine young man, Aragorn replied with quiet pride. Capable of finding your own path when necessary. Besides, I suspect Lady Arwen will prove an excellent teacher. Harry couldn't resist. Among other qualities you admire in her? Aragorn nearly choked on his wine, causing Harry to laugh aloud, a welcome release after the tension of recent days. Impertinent child, Aragorn muttered, though a smile tugged at his lips. I learned from the best, Harry countered. His smile faded as he grew serious once more. Be careful out there, father. This Mormonar. I have a bad feeling about him. I've faced darkness before, Aragorn assured him. And I won't be alone. Focus on mastering your abilities, that's how you can best help against whatever comes. Harry nodded, gazing out at the starlit valley. Whatever strange journey had brought him to this world, whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the courage and honor Aragorn had taught him. He might be from another realm, but Middle-earth was his home, and he would protect it with everything he had. In the morning, Aragorn would depart with Gandalf, and Harry would begin a new chapter of his life in Rivendell. The mystery of his origins was only beginning to unravel, but for tonight, standing beside the man who had raised him with unwavering love and guidance, Harry felt a profound sense of belonging that transcended worlds. Chapter 2, Between Two Worlds, Focus on the Energy Within You, Arwen instructed, her voice calm yet insistent. Don't try to force it. Simply guide it, like redirecting a stream. Harry stood in one of Rivendell's secluded gardens, eyes closed, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. 2 weeks of daily practice had yielded progress, but mastering his unpredictable abilities proved more challenging than tracking orcs through mountain passes. I can feel it, he muttered, but it's like trying to hold water in cupped hands. The familiar tingling sensation crawled up his arms as he extended his hands toward the row of small stones they'd arranged on a bench. His goal was simple in theory: lift a single stone without disturbing the others. In practice, he'd either sent all of them flying or none at all. Your power is different from ours, Arwen acknowledged, circling him with graceful steps. Elven magic flows from our connection to Arda itself, to the song of creation. Yours comes from within, wild and untamed. Harry took a deep breath, focusing on isolating the middle stone. The energy built within him, seeking release. Instead of suppressing it as he'd done for years, he tried to channel it, to direct rather than contain. The middle stone trembled, rose an inch, then 2, then 3. Yes, Arwen encouraged softly. Now hold it there. Harry's concentration intensified. The stone wobbled but remained aloft while the others stayed motionless. 10 seconds passed, 20. A sharp pain lanced through his scar, breaking his focus. All 5 stones shot upward simultaneously, then dropped back to the bench with a clatter. Harry winced, pressing his palm against his forehead. Arwen was at his side instantly. The scar pains you again. It wasn't a question. Harry had experienced these sudden pains several times during their training sessions, always when he was deepest in concentration. It's getting worse, he admitted, lowering himself onto a nearby bench as the throbbing slowly subsided. And more frequent. Arwen sat beside him, her ageless eyes studying his face with concern. Gandalf believed your scar might be the physical connection between worlds, the anchor point through which you passed into Middle-earth. Harry nodded. The wizard's theory made a strange kind of sense. It always burns when I use, whatever this power is. And the dreams grow stronger afterward. Tell me about last night's dream, Arwen requested, her voice gentle but insistent. Harry hesitated. The dreams had become increasingly vivid and disturbing, but talking about them with Arwen somehow helped, her calm presence a counterbalance to the chaotic visions. I saw the castle again, he began, recalling the images that had haunted his sleep. And people wearing black robes with colored emblems, red, blue, yellow, green. They were gathered in a great hall with floating candles overhead. A school, perhaps? Arwen suggested. The colors could represent different houses or clans. Maybe. Harry frowned, trying to recall the fragmented details. There was a feast of some kind. But then it changed, the scene shifted to a dark room where a man with red eyes spoke to followers in black masks. He talked about the boy who lived and something about prophecy. Arwen's expression grew concerned. And the feeling it gave you? Dread, Harry admitted. Pure dread. Like a shadow falling over everything good in the world. He rubbed his scar absently. But there was something else this time, a pull, as if the dream were trying to drag me through to that other place. This connection grows stronger, Arwen observed quietly. Just as Gandalf feared. Harry stared at his hands, frustration building inside him. 2 weeks of training, and I've barely gained any control. Meanwhile, these dreams get clearer, and my scar hurts more often. What if I'm making things worse instead of better? Progress isn't always visible day by day, Arwen reminded him gently. When I first began learning the subtle magics of my people, months passed before I could light a candle with thought alone. But you didn't risk tearing a hole between worlds in the process, Harry countered. Arwen smiled, the expression transforming her already beautiful features. True. But had that been the risk, I would have continued nonetheless. Some paths must be walked despite their dangers. Harry found her confidence strangely comforting. In the 2 weeks since Aragorn and Gandalf had departed, Arwen had become more than just a teacher. Her patience, wisdom, and occasional flashes of surprising humor had helped ease his adjustment to life in Rivendell. "Let's try something different," she suggested, rising gracefully. "Instead of controlling objects, let's see if you can sense energies around you. Close your eyes." Harry complied, taking a deep breath as he'd been taught. "Now, instead of focusing your power outward, turn your awareness to what surrounds you," Arwen instructed. "Feel the life in the garden, the trees, the flowers, even the stones have their own essence." Harry tried to shift his perspective, quieting his thoughts and extending his senses beyond his body. At first, he felt nothing unusual, just the cool breeze on his skin, the sounds of distant waterfalls, the scent of Rivendell's endless spring. Then, gradually, something changed. It began as a subtle awareness, like seeing shapes through fog. The great oak nearby pulsed with slow, deep vitality. The flowers gave off smaller, brighter signatures. And Arwen herself radiated a steady, ancient light that somehow felt both powerful and gentle. "I can see them," Harry whispered in amazement. "Not with my eyes, but I can feel them. Their energies." "Good," Arwen's voice came from his right, though he hadn't heard her move. "Now, what do you sense about yourself? How does your energy differ from what surrounds you?" Harry turned his awareness inward. The power inside him felt different indeed. Where the elven energies flowed like water, his seemed to crackle and spark like lightning contained in a bottle, foreign yet increasingly familiar. "Mine doesn't belong here," he said slowly, opening his eyes to find Arwen watching him intently. "It's like comparing fire to water. Different in essence, not just in strength or purpose." Arwen nodded. "Yet fire and water both have their place in the world. Different, but neither wrong nor right, simply suited to different purposes." Harry considered this perspective. Throughout his life, he'd viewed his abilities as something to suppress, to hide, a dangerous aberration. The idea that they might simply be different rather than wrong felt strangely liberating. "We should break for the midday meal," Arwen suggested, noting the sun's position. "Lord Elrond wishes to speak with you afterward. I believe he has news." Harry's heart quickened. "From Aragorn and Gandalf?" "Perhaps." She offered no further details as they walked together back toward the main buildings of Rivendell. Their path took them through gardens and open corridors where elves went about their daily activities. Even after 2 weeks, Harry found the timeless quality of elven life fascinating. They crafted, studied, sang, and contemplated with a serene focus that made everything seem like an art form, even the simplest tasks performed with graceful precision. Several elves greeted them as they passed, showing Arwen the deep respect due to the Evenstar while regarding Harry with curious interest. By now, most of Rivendell knew of the human with strange abilities who had come to learn from their lord's daughter. They parted at the dining hall, Arwen going to join her handmaidens while Harry found a place among the few other human visitors currently enjoying Elrond's hospitality, mainly travelers and scholars passing through the hidden valley. "The ranger returns," called a cheerful voice as Harry filled his plate. Burin, a young scholar from Gondor, waved him over to his table. "We missed you at the Hall of Fire last night." The minstrels performed the lay of Burin and Luthien. Harry sat across from the scholarly Gondorian, who had arrived in Rivendell just days after himself, seeking historical texts for some research project. Despite being nearly 10 years Harry's senior, Burin had quickly attached himself to the younger man, fascinated by ranger life. "Training ran late," Harry explained, biting into fresh bread with honey. "Lady Arwen is a demanding teacher." "Lucky devil," Burin grinned, lowering his voice. "Half the lords of Gondor would trade their castles for daily lessons with the Evenstar. Is it true she can read thoughts?" Harry shook his head, amused by the rumors that surrounded Arwen. She's perceptive, not a mind reader. Though sometimes it amounts to nearly the same thing. Any word from your father? Burin asked, changing subjects. The rangers at the northern border mentioned increased orc activity near the Weather Hills. Nothing yet, Harry replied, trying to mask his concern. Aragorn was more than capable of handling himself, but the mysteries surrounding Mormonar troubled him deeply. Lord Elrond may have news today, though. Burin nodded thoughtfully. Strange times. Have you heard about the anomalies being reported throughout Eriador? Objects moving on their own, lights in the sky, animals behaving oddly. Harry tensed slightly. What kind of anomalies exactly? Well, there's a farmer near Bree who claims his well water turned to wine for a full day, Burin recounted eagerly. And travelers in the lone lands reported seeing phantom buildings that vanished when approached. The prancing pony practically buzzes with such tales these days. Each example sent a chill down Harry's spine. These incidents sounded disturbingly like manifestations of magic, not Middle-earth subtle, natural magic, but the more overt kind that his own abilities represented. Most are likely exaggerations, Burin continued, oblivious to Harry's discomfort. But something strange is happening. Even the elves seem concerned, though they rarely share such thoughts with outsiders. Harry finished his meal quickly, his appetite diminished by this troubling information. If these anomalies were connected to the weakening barrier between worlds that Gandalf had described, the situation might be deteriorating faster than they'd feared. He excused himself from Burin's company and headed directly to Lord Elrond's study, arriving earlier than their appointed meeting time. The Elf Lord's assistant, seeing his troubled expression, ushered him in without delay. Elrond stood by a large table covered with maps and ancient texts, deep in conversation with an elf Harry didn't recognize. Both looked up as he entered. Harry, Elrond acknowledged with a slight nod. You've arrived sooner than expected. Forgive the interruption, my lord, Harry said with a respectful bow. I've just heard disturbing reports of strange occurrences throughout Eriador that may be relevant to our situation. Elrond dismissed his companion with a subtle gesture before turning his full attention to Harry. Indeed. Such reports have increased in both frequency and strangeness over the past fortnight. I was about to discuss this very matter with you. He indicated the maps on the table. Small red markers dotted the landscape, concentrated in certain areas but scattered across all regions of Eriador. Each marker represents a confirmed anomaly, Elrond explained. Instances where the natural laws of Middle-earth appear temporarily suspended or altered. Harry studied the pattern with growing unease. There are so many. And more reported daily. Elrond's ageless face revealed rare concern. Moreover, they appear to be forming a pattern. He traced his finger across the map, connecting several of the markers. Harry saw it immediately, the resulting shape resembled a spiral, with its center point not far from where Aragorn had found him as an infant. The Trollshaws, Harry murmured. Where I first entered this world. Elrond nodded gravely. The fabric between realms appears to be thinning most rapidly at that location. But the spiral pattern suggests something more troubling, deliberate manipulation rather than natural deterioration. Mormonar, Harry concluded grimly. Perhaps. We received word from Gandalf 3 days ago. Elrond retrieved a sealed letter from his desk. He has uncovered disturbing information about this entity. Harry broke the seal eagerly, recognizing Gandalf's flowing script. Elrond, our investigations yield troubling results. The being calling himself Mormonar appears to be a corrupted Maya, one who turned from Iluvatar's light long ago but did not join Morgoth's initial rebellion. Instead, he pursued forbidden knowledge, studying the spaces between worlds. Ancient texts in Minas Tirith speak of his banishment beyond the circles of the world by the Vala. If he has returned, it can only be through the weakening barrier that Harry's presence has inadvertently created. More concerning still are the artifacts he seeks, items of power from Harry's world that may have crossed over during moments when the barrier thinned. We tracked one such artifact to a village near Weathertop, only to find it recently claimed by black-robed servants of Mormonar. Aragorn follows their trail northward. I journey to consult with Radagast, who reports unusual wildlife behavior throughout Mirkwood that may be connected. The dimensional tear grows. Time is short. Begin preparing Harry for direct confrontation, I fear it may prove inevitable. Gandalf P.S. The anomalies follow a pattern. Map them carefully. Harry looked up from the letter, his mouth dry. Artifacts from my world? Here in Middle-earth? It appears so, Elrond confirmed. Objects that may have slipped through during moments when the barrier between worlds weakened. Like when I use my abilities, Harry realized with a sinking feeling. Each training session, each accidental outburst of power might have been widening the rift. Elrond's expression softened slightly. Do not burden yourself with undue guilt, Harry. This process began long before you had any control over your abilities. What matters now is how we address the growing threat. Harry paced the study, mind racing. These artifacts, what might they be? And why would Mormonar want them? Items of power from your original world would likely function differently here, Elrond theorized. Just as your abilities follow different rules than our magics. Mormonar may believe such objects could grant him unprecedented power in Middle-earth. I should join Aragorn, Harry decided immediately. If these artifacts came through because of me, I'm responsible for preventing their misuse. Elrond studied him thoughtfully. Your training with Arwen has only just begun. You have made progress, but your abilities remain largely unpredictable. With respect, my lord, we don't have the luxury of waiting until I've mastered them, Harry countered. Each day the barrier weakens further. If Mormonar collects more artifacts, gains more power. He left the sentence unfinished, but the implication hung heavily in the air. After a long moment, Elrond nodded. Your argument has merit. However, you will not go alone. Arwen has requested to accompany you, should this decision be reached. Harry blinked in surprise. Lady Arwen wants to leave Rivendell. I thought she rarely ventured beyond the valley borders. A flicker of something, concern, perhaps, or resignation, crossed Elrond's ancient features. My daughter makes her own choices, increasingly independent of my counsel. She believes her knowledge of elven energies may help you counter these disturbances more effectively. The thought of Arwen accompanying him brought mixed feelings. Her guidance had proven invaluable, but the dangers outside Rivendell's protected borders were considerable. When would we leave? Harry asked. Tomorrow at first light, Elrond decided. You will head to the Trollshaws first, the origin point of this disturbance. From there, you can track Aragorn northward if needed. Thank you, my lord. Harry bowed respectfully, recognizing the trust Elrond placed in him despite his reservations. One more thing, Elrond added as Harry turned to leave. Take this. He retrieved a small leather pouch from his desk. Harry accepted it curiously, loosening the drawstring to reveal the broken wand that had accompanied him to Middle-earth as an infant. Gandalf studied it before departing, Elrond explained. He believes it may respond to you more strongly now that your abilities are awakening. It could prove useful in focusing your power. Harry stared at the splintered wooden rod, feeling the now familiar tingle in his fingers as they neared it. Did Gandalf discover anything about its nature? What it might have been used for? Only that it contains a core of some magical substance. He sensed a spark of life within it, dormant but not extinguished. Elrond's eyes were keen as he added, he also believed it might help trigger memories of your original world, should you wish to explore them. Harry carefully rewrapped the wand fragment and secured the pouch to his belt. Thank you. I'll prepare for tomorrow's departure. He left Elrond's study with his mind racing. In less than a day, he would leave the safety of Rivendell, venturing out to confront whatever threats the weakening barrier between worlds had unleashed. The responsibility weighed heavily, yet underneath the anxiety lurked a different feeling, a strange anticipation at the prospect of learning more about his origins. The next morning dawned clear and cool, with mist rising from the valley floor as Harry made final adjustments to his travel gear in the courtyard. He had returned to his ranger attire, sturdy leather jerkin over a simple tunic, well-worn traveling cloak, and the weapons of his training, sword, bow, and hunting knife. "You look more yourself in those clothes," observed Arwen as she approached, her own traveling garb surprisingly practical compared to the flowing gowns she typically wore in Rivendell. Harry smiled wryly. "After 2 weeks in elven tunics, it feels good to be back in something that can take a beating." "Planning on receiving many beatings during our journey?" she teased, adjusting her own light pack. "With my luck. Probably." Harry glanced around. "Will others be joining us?" Arwen shook her head. "My father wished to send a guard, but I convinced him 2 travelers will attract less attention than a company. Speed and stealth serve us better than numbers." Harry nodded, relieved. Though he respected Rivendell's warriors, moving as a ranger required freedom from the formalities of an escort. Lord Elrond himself came to see them off, his face solemn as he embraced his daughter and spoke quietly in Elvish. To Harry, he offered a small leather-bound book. "Records of similar dimensional disturbances throughout the ages," he explained. "Few and rare, but perhaps insightful. May it guide your understanding." "Thank you, my lord." Harry tucked the book carefully into his pack. "We'll send word when we reach the Trollshaws." They departed as the sun crested the eastern mountains, following the path down from the hidden valley toward the wilds of Eriador. Harry felt a curious mixture of regret and relief as Rivendell faded behind them, regret at leaving its peace and beauty, relief at returning to the open wilderness where he'd spent most of his life. Arwen proved an excellent traveling companion. Despite her royal status, she moved through the wilds with the natural grace of her people, tireless on the trail and observant of every detail around them. "You've traveled more than I expected," Harry remarked on their second day, as she easily spotted deer tracks he nearly missed. "I am over 2,000 years old, Harry," she reminded him with a smile. "Even with centuries in Rivendell, there has been time for many journeys." Harry tried to imagine such a lifespan and failed. "It must be strange, watching generations of humans live and die while you remain unchanged." "Not unchanged," she corrected gently. "Merely changing more slowly. And it gives one perspective. The troubles that seem overwhelming in the moment often reveal themselves as mere ripples in the longer flow of time." "I'm not sure this particular trouble qualifies as a ripple," Harry noted dryly. "Tears between worlds seem slightly more significant." Arwen laughed softly. "Perhaps you're right. Though in my experience, most problems appear insurmountable until they're solved, at which point they join the long list of challenges overcome." Her optimism was refreshing, Harry had to admit. After 4 days of steady travel, they reached the western edge of the Trollshaws, the wild, forested region where Aragorn had found him 17 years earlier. "We should be near the original site," Harry observed, consulting the map Aragorn had marked long ago. "Though after so many years, I doubt much evidence remains." Arwen paused suddenly, her head tilted as if listening to sounds beyond human hearing. "Perhaps more remains than you think. Can you feel that?" Harry started to shake his head, then stopped as a subtle sensation washed over him, a faint tingling similar to what he felt when using his abilities, but coming from somewhere ahead rather than within. "Yes," he whispered. "Like static in the air before a lightning strike." They proceeded more cautiously, moving deeper into the ancient forest. Massive trees loomed overhead, their twisted branches creating a canopy that blocked much of the afternoon sunlight. The sensation grew stronger with each step, until Harry's scar began to prickle uncomfortably. They crested a small rise, and below them lay a perfectly circular clearing that seemed unnatural amid the wild forest growth. "There," Harry breathed. "That has to be it." The clearing was perhaps 30 paces across, devoid of trees but covered in strange, silvery grass that seemed to shimmer slightly even without breeze. At its center stood 3 stone monoliths arranged in a triangle, each about the height of a man. "Those stones were not mentioned in Aragorn's account," Arwen observed quietly. "They weren't there when he found me," Harry confirmed, the hairs on his arms rising as they approached the clearing's edge. Something's changed. Arwen reached out her hand, stopping just short of the silvery grass. The barrier between worlds is extraordinarily thin here. I can feel the otherness pressing against our reality. Harry unsheathed his hunting knife and cautiously extended it to touch one of the silvery blades of grass. The metal blade passed through without resistance, but the grass itself seemed to ripple at contact, creating spreading waves like a stone dropped in still water. It's responding to your presence, Arwen observed. The ripples move toward you, not away. She was right. The disturbance in the strange grass flowed back toward Harry, as if drawn to him specifically. The sensation intensified the prickling in his scar. I need to go to the center, he decided, despite the warning bells clanging in his mind. Those stones. I feel like they're calling to me. Arwen looked concerned but nodded. I'll accompany you. Stay close to me. Together, they stepped into the clearing. The moment Harry's boots touched the silvery grass, a jolt ran through his entire body, not painful, but intensely foreign, as if he'd suddenly been immersed in an electrical current. Are you all right? Arwen asked, steadying him with a hand on his arm. Yes, he managed, though all right hardly described the cascade of sensations flooding through him. It's just overwhelming. Each step toward the center increased the strange energy coursing through his body. The clearing itself seemed to pulse around them, the silvery grass rippling in waves that followed their progress. By the time they reached the stone monoliths, Harry felt almost drunk with the power flowing through the air. The 3 stones were covered in markings unlike any language Harry recognized, not Elvish, Dwarvish, or any human script he'd encountered in Middle-earth. Yet somehow, staring at them triggered flashes of recognition, as if part of him remembered their meaning. These are recent, Arwen said, examining the stones carefully without touching them. Perhaps months old, not years. Someone has been here, enhancing the natural weakness in the barrier. Mormonar, Harry concluded grimly. Gandalf said he studies the spaces between worlds. He circled the stones, the prickling in his scar intensifying to a steady burn. When he completed the circle, standing at the exact center of the triangle, something extraordinary happened. The air between the stones rippled visibly, like heat rising from summer-baked stone. Colors swirled within the distortion, blues, reds, golds, coalescing gradually into recognizable shapes. A great hall with 4 long tables. Floating candles. Banners bearing emblems of lion, eagle, badger, and serpent. Harry, Arwen's voice seemed distant despite her standing right beside him. What do you see? The castle from my dreams, he whispered, transfixed by the images floating before him. Some kind of school, I think. The vision shifted, showing corridors and moving staircases, then grounds surrounding the castle, a lake, a forest, a village in the distance. People moved through these scenes, mostly young, wearing black robes and carrying wands similar to the broken one he'd brought from Rivendell. This is where I'm from, Harry realized, his voice thick with emotion he hadn't anticipated. My world. The images changed again, revealing an older man with a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles, speaking to assembled students. Though no sound accompanied the vision, Harry somehow knew this figure was important, a leader or teacher of great significance. Then, abruptly, the scene darkened. The castle appeared again, but damaged, with sections crumbling and fires burning. Masked figures in black robes sent jets of colored light from their wands, while defenders returned fire with similar magic. A war, Harry murmured, watching the battle unfold before him. They're fighting with spells. Magic like mine. At that moment, the vision focused on a specific figure, a young woman with brilliant red hair, firing spells with extraordinary skill as she protected a bundle in her arms. Her face came into clear view, and Harry gasped. That's her, the woman from my dreams. With the same eyes as mine. Your mother, Arwen said softly beside him. The scene shifted one final time, showing a pale figure with snake-like features and burning red eyes, advancing on the woman. She stood defiantly, the bundle, a baby, clutched protectively against her chest. "No!" Harry cried out, instinctively reaching toward the vision. The moment his fingers touched the swirling colors, several things happened simultaneously. A blinding flash erupted from the point of contact. Pain exploded in Harry's scar, dropping him to his knees. And the vision shattered like glass, fragments dissolving into the air with a sound like distant thunder. "Harry!" Arwen knelt beside him, her hands cool against his burning forehead. "Your scar, it's bleeding." He touched his fingers to his forehead and they came away red. The pain receded gradually, leaving him shaken but coherent. "I saw her die," he said numbly. "My mother. She was protecting me from someone. Something. A monster with red eyes." Arwen helped him to his feet, her expression grave. "The stones have been activated. Someone has been strengthening the connection between worlds deliberately." Harry looked around the clearing with new eyes. The silvery grass rippled more violently now, and the air throughout the space seemed to shimmer with barely contained energy. "We need to report this to Elrond," he decided, still unsteady but determined. "If Mormonar is using this site to access my world, to bring through objects of power." "Wait," Arwen interrupted, her head tilting in that distinctive way that indicated she sensed something beyond human perception. "We're not alone." Harry reached for his sword, scanning the trees surrounding the clearing. For a moment, he saw nothing. Then, movement, dark figures emerging from the forest on all sides. At least a dozen men in black cloaks, their faces obscured by hoods, moving with unnatural silence toward the clearing. "We're surrounded," he muttered, drawing his blade. "Mormonar's servants?" "Most likely," Arwen agreed, her own slender elven blade appearing in her hand. "They must have been watching the site." The figures stopped at the edge of the clearing, forming an ominous circle around it. One stepped forward, taller than the others, with a distinctive silver clasp holding his cloak. "The lightning-marked boy," the figure called, his voice carrying an accent Harry couldn't place. "Our master said you would come here eventually, drawn by the connection to your former world." "Your master?" Harry challenged. "Mormonar, I presume. The corrupted Maya who fears showing his own face." A chuckle emerged from beneath the hood. "Fear? No. The master simply has more important matters to attend to than collecting strays." The figure gestured toward the stones. "You've seen it now, haven't you? Glimpses of your true home. The world you were torn from as an infant." Harry tensed, unsettled by the figure's knowledge. "What does Mormonar want with me?" "Want? He wants nothing from you except what you've already provided, a thinning of the veil between worlds." The figure spread his hands. "Though he would speak with you, if you're willing. About your unique position in current events." "And if I'm not willing?" Harry kept his sword ready, acutely aware of the other figures slowly advancing around the clearing's perimeter. "Then we have orders to take you regardless." The menace in the voice became more pronounced. Though that method would prove considerably less comfortable for everyone involved. Arwen stepped forward, her presence radiating ancient power despite her slender frame. "You face the daughter of Elrond half-elven and a ranger of the north. Consider your next actions carefully." The leader tilted his hooded head, studying Arwen with new interest. "The Evenstar herself? An unexpected prize. The master will be pleased." He raised his hand, and the circle of figures began to advance into the clearing. The silvery grass rippled violently around their feet, responding to the intrusion. "Harry," Arwen said quietly. "Remember your training. Focus the energy, don't let it control you." Harry nodded, taking a deep breath as he centered himself. The familiar tingling built rapidly, fueled by the clearing's strange energies. This time, instead of suppressing it, he channeled it deliberately, focusing on the ground beneath the approaching figures. The surge released, controlled but powerful. The silvery grass twisted and elongated, wrapping around the legs of their attackers like living restraints. Several men fell, struggling against the animated vegetation. The leader shouted commands in a harsh language Harry didn't recognize. 3 of his followers raised their hands, revealing silver devices strapped to their palms. They pressed these against the writhing grass, which immediately blackened and withered at the contact. Artifacts, Arwen realized. From your world. Harry had no time to consider the implications. The momentary advantage lost, their attackers closed in rapidly. He engaged the nearest with his sword, their blades meeting with a clash of steel. Years of training with Aragorn served him well. Harry parried the first attacker's thrust and countered with a strike that found its mark, sending the man stumbling backward with a cry. A second came from his left, wielding a curved blade with unusual skill. Meanwhile, Arwen faced 2 attackers simultaneously, her elven blade a blur as she moved with the legendary grace of her people. Despite being outnumbered, she maintained perfect control, her fighting style more dance than combat. Harry dispatched his second opponent with a pommel strike to the temple, then turned to find the leader approaching, drawing a weapon unlike any Harry had seen in Middle-earth, a slender rod of dark wood, similar to his own broken wand but intact. A gift from beyond, the leader announced, pointing the wand toward Harry. Let me show you what your kind can truly do. A jet of red light shot from the wand's tip. Harry dove aside, the spell, for what else could it be? Missing him by inches and striking a tree behind him, which immediately burst into flames. You have no idea of your potential, the leader called, sending another spell that Harry barely avoided. You play at being a ranger when you could command powers beyond anything in this primitive world. Harry scrambled behind one of the stone monoliths as a third spell shattered the ground where he'd stood. The situation had deteriorated rapidly. Arwen still fought brilliantly but was gradually being forced back by 4 opponents, while others recovered from Harry's initial attack. Desperation fueled his next decision. Harry reached for the leather pouch at his belt, withdrawing the broken wand fragment. The moment his fingers closed around it, a warm shock ran up his arm, not painful, but intensely energizing, as if a circuit had been completed. The leader saw the wand and hesitated momentarily. Where did you get that? Give it to me. Harry clutched the broken wand tightly, feeling the power building within him differently than before, more focused, more directed. Without conscious thought, a word formed in his mind, rising from some long-buried memory. Stupefy. He shouted, pointing the broken wand at the leader. A jet of red light, identical to what the leader had cast, erupted from the splintered end of Harry's wand. The man tried to dodge but was too slow. The spell hit him squarely in the chest, lifting him off his feet and throwing him backward to land in a motionless heap at the clearing's edge. Harry stared at the broken wand in his hand, stunned by what had just happened. The word, the gesture, the effect, none of it had been conscious decision, yet it had flowed through him as naturally as breathing. There was no time to process this development. The remaining attackers, seeing their leader fall, redoubled their efforts. 2 broke away from Arwen and charged toward Harry, weapons raised. Impedimenta. The word came unbidden to his lips again, the broken wand responding instantly. Both attackers slowed dramatically, as if running through deep water. Harry turned to help Arwen, but found additional assistance had arrived from an unexpected quarter. Arrows whistled from the forest edge, finding targets among Mormonar's servants with deadly accuracy. The distinctive fletching marked them as ranger arrows. Harry! A familiar voice called from the tree line. Aragorn emerged from the forest, sword drawn, with 3 fellow rangers behind him. The tide turned instantly. The remaining attackers, finding themselves suddenly outnumbered, broke and fled into the trees. 2 rangers pursued while Aragorn and the third rushed into the clearing. Father! Harry called, relief washing over him at the sight of Aragorn unharmed. Your timing is impeccable. As usual, Aragorn agreed with a grim smile, quickly assessing the situation. His eyes widened slightly at the strange state of the clearing, the silvery grass more agitated than ever, rippling violently in waves that centered on Harry. Arwen approached, her blade still drawn but mercifully unbloodied. Estel, she greeted Aragorn with the name she'd always used for him. "How did you find us?" "I've been tracking these servants of Mormonar for days," he explained, gesturing toward the unconscious leader. "They led me here. Though I didn't expect to find you both at the center of their ambush." Harry looked down at the broken wand still clutched in his hand. "I remembered, Aragorn. Not everything, but something. When I used this, it was like muscle memory, knowledge I didn't know I possessed suddenly available." Aragorn studied the wand with concern. "You cast magic like theirs? Like the leader used against you?" Harry nodded slowly. The words, the gestures, they came naturally, as if I'd done it 1,000 times before. And it felt right. Like finding a part of myself I didn't know was missing. The third ranger approached cautiously, examining the 3 stone monoliths. "This entire clearing reeks of forbidden arts," he observed. "Halbarad has taken a prisoner, one of the black-robed men. Perhaps he'll provide answers." "We should withdraw," Arwen suggested, looking at the increasingly unstable energies rippling through the clearing. "This place grows more dangerous by the moment. The barrier between worlds thins with each passing minute." As if to emphasize her point, the air between the stone monoliths shimmered violently, colors swirling momentarily to reveal another brief glimpse of the castle before dissipating. They retreated from the clearing, dragging the unconscious leader with them. Once at a safer distance, Harry examined the man more carefully. Pushing back his hood revealed a face that might have once been handsome, marred by a network of strange scars that resembled burned writing across his skin. "Binding marks," Aragorn observed grimly. "This one has sworn himself to Mormonar's service through blood ritual." "There were at least a dozen," Harry reported. "All armed, and some carrying artifacts they claimed came from my world, devices that neutralized my magic." "Anti-magic devices?" Aragorn frowned. "Such things don't exist in Middle-earth. Nor should they exist here at all," Arwen added. "Mormonar must have brought them through from Harry's world, where different rules govern magical forces." The other rangers returned, one leading a bound prisoner while the second reported the rest had escaped deeper into the trollshaws. "This one spoke when captured," reported Halbarad, Aragorn's trusted lieutenant and distant kinsman. "Claimed to be from a place called Ministry of Magic, before he realized I had no idea what that meant." Harry felt another jolt of recognition at the phrase. Ministry of Magic, that sounds familiar somehow. The prisoner, younger than the others, with less of the fanatical dedication in his eyes, glared at Harry. "You're him, aren't you? The Potter boy. The one they said vanished the night he who must not be named fell." "Potter?" Harry repeated, the name striking a chord deep within. "Is that my name?" The prisoner laughed bitterly. "You don't even know who you are, do you? Harry Potter, the boy who lived. Your disappearance caused quite the stir in our world, let me tell you. Some thought you dead, others hidden away. No one guessed you'd been pulled into another realm entirely." Harry struggled to process this information. "Who is he who must not be named? The man with red eyes from my visions?" Fear flashed across the prisoner's face. "Don't make me say it. Names have power." "Voldemort," came a new voice from behind them. They turned to see Gandalf emerging from the trees, leaning on his staff as if weary from long travel. "I believe that's the name you fear to speak." The prisoner paled visibly at the word, shrinking back as if struck. Gandalf approached, his ancient eyes taking in the scene with rapid assessment. "I see I've arrived at an eventful moment," the wizard observed. "When I sensed the surge in power from leagues away, I feared the worst." "Gandalf," Aragorn greeted him with evident relief. "Your counsel would be most welcome. We've discovered Mormonar's servants attempting to capture Harry at the site of his original arrival." Gandalf nodded gravely. "The origin point. The thinnest part of the veil between worlds. I suspected he would target this location. His gaze fell on Harry, noting the broken wand still clutched in his hand. "You've remembered something of your former self." It wasn't a question. Harry nodded slowly. "Fragments only. But I cast spells, actual spells, with this broken wand. And this prisoner claims my name is Potter. Harry Potter." "A name carries power," Gandalf agreed. "Particularly when reclaimed by its rightful owner." He turned to the prisoner. "And you, young man, have strayed far from your proper path. Tell me, how came you to serve Morminar?" The prisoner glowered but seemed unable to resist the authority in Gandalf's voice. "He found me in London, appeared out of nowhere, knew things about magic no Muggle should know. Offered knowledge, power, abilities beyond ministry restrictions. And in exchange?" Gandalf prompted. "Service," the prisoner admitted reluctantly. "Help locating magical objects that had crossed over. Identifying potential recruits with magical ability in this world. And capturing me," Harry added coldly. The prisoner nodded. "He's obsessed with you. Says you're the key to fully opening the passage between worlds. That your connection to both realms makes you uniquely valuable." Gandalf's expression darkened. "As I feared. Morminar seeks not merely to collect artifacts or knowledge from your world, Harry, he intends to create a permanent doorway between realms." "To what purpose?" Arwen asked. "What could he gain from such an act?" "Power unimaginable," Gandalf answered grimly. "Access to magics that follow different rules, energies unknown to Middle-earth. With such power, he could challenge even the Valar themselves." The gravity of the situation settled over the group like a physical weight. Harry felt the burden of responsibility more keenly than ever. His very existence in Middle-earth had created this vulnerability, this opportunity for a corrupted Maya to gain unprecedented power. "What now?" he asked simply, looking between Aragorn and Gandalf. "We must track Morminar to his stronghold," Aragorn decided. "End this threat at its source before the barrier weakens further." "Agreed," Gandalf said. "But first, we should understand exactly what we face." He turned to the prisoner. "Where does your master make his dwelling? Where has he taken the artifacts collected from Harry's world?" The prisoner's eyes darted nervously. "The Black Tower, in the northern wastes beyond Angmar. But you'll never reach it. The approaches are guarded by more than men, creatures pulled through from the other side, twisted by the crossing. Then we shall need more than swords," Gandalf concluded, looking meaningfully at Harry and his broken wand. "We shall need the power of both worlds combined." Arwen, who had been examining the unconscious leader more carefully, suddenly called their attention. "This one bears a mark I've not seen before." She pushed back the man's sleeve to reveal a tattoo on his forearm, a skull with a snake protruding from its mouth, rendered in dark ink that seemed to writhe slightly when observed directly. "The dark mark," the prisoner whispered, fear evident in his voice. "He's one of the original Death Eaters, followers of you-know-who who escaped justice. Morminar recruited heavily from their ranks, promising power and purpose to those left adrift after their master's fall." Harry stared at the mark, feeling a visceral revulsion that transcended conscious thought. Something about that symbol connected directly to his buried memories, to the trauma that had somehow sent him across worlds as an infant. "This confirms my worst fears," Gandalf said gravely. "Morminar isn't merely collecting magical artifacts from your world, Harry. He's recruiting its dark wizards, learning their magic, combining it with his own corrupted powers. Then we face enemies wielding powers from both worlds," Aragorn concluded grimly. "And so shall we," Harry replied with sudden determination. He held up the broken wand. "This responds to me now. The spells I cast, they were effective against Morminar's servants. If I can remember more, learn to control this magic alongside what Arwen has taught me." "You propose to fight fire with fire," Gandalf observed, his bushy eyebrows rising. "A dangerous proposition, but perhaps our only option." "I've spent my life suppressing what I am," Harry said quietly. Maybe it's time I embraced it instead. Not just for my sake, but for Middle-earth's protection. Aragorn studied his adopted son with a mixture of pride and concern. This path will not be easy. Wielding such power carries its own dangers, to your spirit as much as your body. I know, Harry acknowledged. But I won't let Mormonar use my presence here to harm the world that took me in, the people who raised me as their own. He looked directly at Aragorn as he said this, the bond between them transcending blood or origin. Gandalf nodded slowly. Then we have our course. First, to Rivendell, where we can properly question these prisoners and gather the resources needed for the journey north. Then, to Mormonar's stronghold, where we must confront the threat directly before the barrier between worlds collapses completely. As they prepared to depart, Harry gazed back at the clearing one last time. The silvery grass continued its restless movement, and for just a moment, he thought he glimpsed another vision forming between the stones, the red-haired woman with his eyes, smiling sadly as if across an impossible distance. Then it was gone, leaving only questions and a growing sense that his journey of discovery had only just begun. Two worlds pulled at him now, the one he barely remembered yet was inexorably connected to, and the one he'd grown to love as home. Somehow, he would need to reconcile both halves of his identity if he hoped to protect either realm from what was coming. The journey back to Rivendell took 3 days, hampered by the need to guard their prisoners and avoid potential ambushes from Mormonar's remaining servants. Harry spent much of the time experimenting with his broken wand, attempting to recapture the instinctual knowledge that had surfaced during the confrontation. Some spells came more easily than others. Simple charms, lighting the campfire with a whispered incendio, levitating small objects with Wingardium Leviosa, emerged from his subconscious like forgotten songs suddenly remembered. More complex magic remained elusive, fragments of knowledge without context or instruction. Arwen observed these practices with fascination, occasionally offering insights from her perspective of elven magic. Though fundamentally different in nature, she helped Harry understand how to direct and focus his intent, a skill applicable to any magical tradition. It's as if the knowledge was always there, just dormant, Harry explained on their second evening, after successfully transforming a pebble into a button and back again. Each spell I remember seems to unlock others connected to it. Memory is rarely truly lost, Arwen observed. Merely buried beneath newer experiences. Your magic was part of you before you came to Middle-earth, it's natural that using it would reawaken those pathways in your mind. Harry rolled the transformed button between his fingers thoughtfully. But I was just an infant when Aragorn found me. How could I have memories of spells I'd never learned? Perhaps magic is more innate to your people than you realize, she suggested. Or perhaps these aren't memories of your own casting, but observations of others, your parents, perhaps. The thought of his parents, particularly the red-haired woman from his visions, sent a pang through Harry's chest. For 17 years, he'd considered Aragorn his father in all ways that mattered. Now, learning of his birth parents complicated those feelings in ways he wasn't fully prepared to address. Gandalf joined them, settling his aged frame beside the campfire with a soft grunt. Your progress is remarkable, he commented, having observed Harry's practice. The magic of your birth world responds to you naturally, despite your long separation from it. It feels different from the accidental bursts I've experienced all my life, Harry admitted. More controlled, but also somehow, narrower. More specific in purpose. That aligns with what our reluctant guest has revealed, Gandalf replied, nodding toward their prisoner, who sat bound under Halberad's watchful eye nearby. The magic of your world requires specific incantations and movements for specific effects. More formulaic than the broader, intention-based magic of Middle-earth. Harry considered this. Like the difference between a crafted tool and raw material. My outbursts were untamed energy, these spells are that same energy shaped for particular purposes. An apt analogy, Gandalf approved. And one that suggests an important advantage. By learning to channel your magic through both methods, you may develop capabilities unique in either world. The prospect was both exciting and intimidating. If only I had proper instruction, Harry sighed, looking at his broken wand. Or even an intact wand. This one works, but I can feel how incomplete it is. Perhaps that may be remedied, Gandalf said cryptically. Our prisoner has revealed that Mormonar possesses several intact wands collected from your world, spoils from dark wizards who crossed over willingly to serve him. Harry's eyes widened at this information. At his northern stronghold. The Black Tower, yes. Gandalf poked at the fire with a stick. A fortress in the wastelands beyond Angmar, constructed where ancient lines of power converge. There, he conducts his experiments on the barrier between worlds. And gathers his forces, added Aragorn, joining their conversation after setting the Night's Watch rotation. According to our captive, Mormonar commands not only dark wizards from Harry's world but corrupted men of Middle-earth as well. An army straddling two realms, Gandalf mused grimly. Wielding powers neither world fully understands. The implications were sobering. Harry stared into the flames, contemplating the escalating threat. What had begun as a personal mystery, the nature of his abilities, had grown into a danger that threatened the very fabric of Middle-earth. Why hasn't he moved against us more directly? Harry wondered aloud. If he commands such power, why send servants to capture me rather than coming himself? Our prisoner suggests Mormonar rarely leaves the Black Tower, Aragorn explained. He conducts some ritual or experiment that requires his constant attention, something to do with strengthening the connection between worlds. Or perhaps he cannot, Gandalf suggested thoughtfully. The prisoner mentioned that crossing between realms is not without cost. Those who have done so suffer various afflictions, physical distortions, mental instabilities. Mormonar himself may be limited by such effects. Harry absently touched his lightning scar. Yet I crossed as an infant and survived relatively intact. A mystery that may hold the key to understanding your importance in all this, Gandalf agreed. According to our prisoner, you are known in your birth world as the boy who lived, one who survived a killing curse from this Dark Lord Voldemort, an act previously thought impossible. The name sent another jolt of recognition through Harry. Voldemort, he was the one with red eyes in my vision. The one who killed my mother. And attempted to kill you, only to be defeated somehow in the process, Gandalf confirmed. A magical protection was triggered, perhaps by your mother's sacrifice, that not only shielded you from death but apparently tore open a temporary passage between worlds, through which you were sent or fell. The pieces were gradually fitting together, forming a picture both clearer and more complex than Harry had anticipated. His very presence in Middle-earth was the result of ancient magic, love, sacrifice, and perhaps some measure of fate or divine intervention. We'll reach Rivendell by midday tomorrow, Aragorn announced, changing the subject to more immediate concerns. Lord Elrond should be warned about what we've discovered. The threat Mormonar poses extends beyond just Harry now, it endangers all of Middle-earth. Harry nodded, setting aside his broken wand for the night. And after Rivendell? North, Aragorn said simply. To the Black Tower, where this threat must be confronted at its source. Rivendell welcomed them with its customary tranquility, though a tension now underlay the peaceful atmosphere. News of their encounter in the Trollshaws had preceded them, carried by swift elven messengers Arwen had dispatched during their journey. Lord Elrond awaited them in his study, maps of the northern regions already spread across his table. After greetings were exchanged and the prisoners secured, they gathered to share all they had learned. The situation grows more urgent than we feared, Elrond concluded after hearing their full report. These incursions between worlds cannot continue unchecked. The very fabric of Arda strains against such violations. The prisoner's information about Mormonar's stronghold aligns with my own investigations, Gandalf added, indicating a location on the map far to the north. The Black Tower stands in a desolate region where few venture, a place where ancient powers were once contained and forgotten. A 3-week journey at least, Aragorn observed, tracing the likely route with his finger. Through increasingly dangerous territory. And time is against us, Arwen noted. With each passing day, the barrier weakens further. Harry studied the map intently, noting the vast distance between Rivendell and their destination. We'll need supplies, weapons effective against both conventional foes and magical ones. And more allies, Aragorn added. This task exceeds what our small company can accomplish alone. I have sent messages to the Rangers of the North, Elrond informed them. Those who can be spared will join your company. Additionally, several of our own warriors have volunteered for this quest. My son's among them, he added with a mixture of pride and concern. Elladan and Elrohir returned from patrol yesterday and insisted on joining once they heard the nature of the threat. Harry had met Arwen's brothers several times throughout his life, skilled warriors with centuries of experience fighting the dark creatures of Middle-earth. Their addition would significantly strengthen their company. What of the prisoners? Aragorn asked. The leader remains unconscious, resistant to all attempts at healing, Elrond reported. The younger one has revealed much, though I sense he withholds crucial details. Fear binds his tongue more than loyalty. I'd like to speak with him again, Harry requested. Now that I understand more about my connection to his world, I might ask better questions. Elrond nodded permission. He is held in the eastern quarters. Arwen can guide you. As they left Elrond's study, Harry found himself walking beside Arwen through Rivendell's graceful corridors. The brief return to civilization highlighted how quickly their relationship had evolved during their journey, from teacher and student to something closer to equals united by shared purpose. You've changed since we left Rivendell, she observed as they walked. There's a certainty in you that wasn't there before. Harry considered this. Learning even fragments of my past has helped. Before, I felt like half a person, now I begin to see a more complete picture, even if parts remain shadowed. And your magic grows stronger by the day, she added. The spells you cast now have purpose and control. Thanks largely to your guidance, Harry acknowledged. Your teachings about focus and intention apply regardless of which world's magic I'm channeling. They reached the eastern quarters, where guards stood outside a chamber door. At Arwen's nod, they stepped aside, allowing Harry and Arwen to enter. The prisoner sat by a window, apparently enjoying the view of Rivendell's waterfalls despite his captivity. He turned as they entered, his expression guarded but less hostile than during their earlier encounters. Mr. Potter, he greeted Harry with surprising formality. I wondered when you'd come for another chat. You know my name, Harry replied, taking a seat across from him. But I don't know yours. A flicker of surprise crossed the prisoner's face. Jenkins. Malcolm Jenkins. Former employee of the Department of Magical Transportation before all this. You're a long way from home, Malcolm, Harry observed. How exactly does a ministry employee end up serving a corrupted Maya in another world? Jenkins laughed bitterly. Wouldn't believe me if I told you. Let's just say when a being of immense power appears in your office after hours, speaks directly into your mind, and offers knowledge forbidden by your government, well, curiosity gets the better of some of us. Mormonar came to your world himself? Arwen asked sharply. He can cross the barrier at will. Jenkins shook his head. Not physically, not at first. He could project himself, a shadow, a voice. Enough to make contact, to influence. The first physical crossings were objects, then people. Now. He hesitated. Now he's found ways to bring larger things through. People, creatures, perhaps soon himself. Using the energy from my connection to both worlds, Harry concluded grimly. You're the linchpin, Jenkins confirmed. The boy who lived, who exists in both realities simultaneously. Your scar forms a permanent bridge between worlds. Harry's hand went instinctively to his lightning mark. What do you know about how I got this scar? About what happened the night my parents died? Jenkins shifted uncomfortably. That's ancient history now, 17 years passed in our world. You were just a baby when he who must not be named came to Godric's Hollow to kill you. Why? Harry pressed. Why would this dark wizard target an infant? A prophecy, they say. Jenkins glanced nervously at the window, as if expecting to be overheard. Something about you having the power to vanquish the Dark Lord. He tried to eliminate the threat before you grew up. But failed, Harry finished. And was defeated instead. Jenkins nodded. The killing curse rebounded somehow. Destroyed his body, left you with just that scar. You became famous overnight, the boy who lived, the infant who defeated the greatest dark wizard of our age. Then I disappeared, Harry said slowly, pieces falling into place. The magical backlash must have torn a hole between worlds, and I fell through, to be found by Aragorn in the Trollshaws. A mystery that confounded the wizarding world for years, Jenkins confirmed. Some thought relatives had hidden you away for protection. Others believed you died in the magical backlash. No one imagined you'd been transported to an entirely different realm. Until Mormonar discovered the truth, Arwen interjected. How did he learn of Harry's whereabouts? Jenkins hesitated before answering. The Dark Lord may have been defeated, but not destroyed. There are those who believe he exists still, in weakened form, seeking restoration. Mormonar communicated with this essence somehow, across the boundary between worlds. Learned about you, about the connection your scar creates. Harry felt a chill run through him. Voldemort is still alive in your world? Jenkins flinched at the name. No one knows for certain. Just whispers, rumors, but Mormonar speaks of him as if he knows, calls him brother in shadow, when he thinks no one is listening. The implications were disturbing on multiple levels. Not only was Mormonar attempting to breach the barrier between worlds, but he might be collaborating with a dark wizard from the other side, the very being who had tried to murder Harry as an infant. Tell me about the wands, Harry said, changing subjects abruptly. How many does Mormonar possess? How did he acquire them? Several dozen at least, Jenkins replied. Some from willing recruits like the Death Eaters who joined him. Others, collected from wizards who resisted and failed. And they function here in Middle-earth? Despite the different magical laws. Jenkins nodded. That's what makes them so valuable. They channel magic according to our world's rules, even here where such rules shouldn't apply. It creates exemptions to the natural order of this reality. Harry exchanged a significant look with Arwen. The ability to wield magic that ignored Middle-earth's fundamental laws could make Mormonar nearly unstoppable, a threat beyond even what they'd imagined. One last question, Harry said, leaning forward. What is Mormonar's ultimate goal? What does he hope to achieve by merging our worlds? For the first time, genuine fear showed plainly on Jenkins' face. Power beyond measuring. To rewrite the rules of both realities. He speaks of becoming a new Vala, a god governing the merged worlds he creates. Such ambition borders on madness, Arwen observed. Even the most corrupted mayor never aspired to rewrite reality itself. Madness, maybe, Jenkins agreed. But he's methodical about it. Each step carefully planned and executed. And he's closer to success than you realize. Harry stood, having heard enough to confirm their worst fears. Thank you for your honesty, Malcolm. It may help save both our worlds. As they turned to leave, Jenkins called after them. Potter. One more thing you should know. There's a school for wizards in our world, Hogwarts. You would have attended had you remained. Your name is still in their book, they say. Still waiting for the boy who lived to claim his place. Harry paused at the door. I have a place already, he replied simply. But I appreciate knowing that. As they left the prisoners' quarters, Harry's mind raced with all he'd learned. His past was becoming clearer, a picture emerging from fragmented pieces, yet each answer spawned new questions. You're troubled, Arwen observed as they walked back toward the main hall. I have a life in two worlds, but belong fully to neither, Harry admitted. And now both face danger because of me. Arwen stopped, turning to face him directly. Not because of you, Harry. Because of Mormonar's ambition and this Voldemort's dark legacy. You are merely the bridge they seek to exploit, not the architect of their designs. Her words helped, though the weight of responsibility still pressed heavily. They continued toward the hall where preparations for their northern journey were already underway. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Rangers arrived in small groups, answering Lord Elrond's call. Supplies were gathered, weapons prepared, maps consulted. Harry spent hours each day practicing with his broken wand, recovering more spells from his subconscious memory while also training physically with Aragorn to maintain his ranger skills. On the evening before their departure, Harry stood on one of Rivendell's many balconies, watching stars appear above the peaceful valley. Tomorrow they would venture north toward uncertain confrontation, leaving behind the safety of the last homely house. "May I join you?" asked a voice behind him. Harry turned to see Aragorn approaching, carrying 2 cups of steaming liquid. "Always," Harry replied, accepting one of the cups gratefully. The aromatic tea was a specialty of Rivendell, soothing to both body and mind. They stood in companionable silence for a time, gazing at the stars. Finally, Aragorn spoke. "You've learned much about yourself these past weeks. Discovered abilities and origins I could never have taught you." Harry heard the unspoken question beneath his words. "It doesn't change who raised me," he said firmly. "Who taught me honor, courage, compassion. Those things define me more than where I was born or what powers I possess." Aragorn smiled slightly, relief visible in his weathered features. "I'm proud of the man you've become, Harry. Whatever comes next, remember that." "I had an excellent example to follow," Harry replied simply. Another silence fell between them, comfortable rather than awkward, the understanding of 2 people who knew each other too well to need constant words. "Do you ever wonder," Harry finally asked, "what might have happened if you hadn't found me that day? If someone else had discovered an infant with a lightning scar in the Trollshaws?" Aragorn considered the question seriously. "I believe some paths are laid before us by greater powers than ourselves. Perhaps you were meant to be found, if not by me, then by someone who would recognize your worth beyond your strange abilities." "I'm glad it was you," Harry said quietly. "As am I," Aragorn replied, clasping Harry's shoulder firmly. "Now get some rest. Tomorrow begins a journey unlike any we've undertaken before." Harry nodded, finishing his tea before heading to his quarters. Sleep came surprisingly easily despite the challenges ahead, and for once, his dreams were not of castles or dark wizards, but of the peaceful forests and hills of Eriador where he'd grown up ranging alongside Aragorn, the only father he'd ever truly known. Dawn broke clear and cool over Rivendell as the company gathered in the main courtyard. 22 in total, 7 rangers including Aragorn and Harry, 8 elven warriors led by Elladan and Elrohir, Gandalf, Arwen, who had insisted on accompanying them despite her father's reservations, and 5 additional elves skilled in healing and lore. Lord Elrond addressed them before their departure, his ancient eyes grave yet determined. "You undertake a journey to confront a threat few in Middle-earth fully comprehend. The corruption of a Maya is rare and terrible, doubly so when empowered by magics foreign to our world. Go with the blessings of Rivendell and all free peoples." They departed northward, following the path that would eventually lead them beyond the last homely house's protected borders into the wilds of Eriador. The early days of travel passed without incident as they moved through lands still relatively safe and familiar to the rangers. Harry found himself riding beside different members of the company each day, building relationships and learning what he could from each. Elladan and Elrohir shared ancient tales of battles against darkness, Halbarad taught him subtleties of tracking he'd not yet mastered, Gandalf spoke of the nature of magic in Middle-earth and how it might interact with the powers Harry was rediscovering. Most evenings, he practiced with his broken wand, recalling more spells with each passing day. The others watched these sessions with varying degrees of fascination and unease. Magic in Harry's style was unknown in Middle-earth, its directness and immediate effects a stark contrast to the subtler enchantments of elves or the deeper magics of wizards like Gandalf. On the 10th day of their journey, as they made camp in the shadow of Weather Hills, Aragorn called Harry aside for a private conversation. We approach more dangerous territory, he explained, unfolding a map between them. Beyond these hills lie the lands where Angmar's influence once held sway. Though centuries have passed since the Witch King's defeat, darkness lingers in the stones and soil. Harry nodded, studying the map carefully. And Mormonar's stronghold lies further still, beyond even ancient Angmar. Yes. The lands become increasingly desolate as we travel north, fewer settlements, more ruins, harsher conditions. Aragorn's finger traced their planned route. We should reach the edges of the wastelands within a week, assuming no significant delays. You're concerned about something specific, Harry observed, noting the tension in his father's bearing. Aragorn hesitated before answering. Our scouts report unusual activity ahead. Creatures not native to these regions, some potentially from your world rather than ours. Mormonar knows we're coming, Harry concluded grimly. It seems likely. Aragorn rolled the map carefully. From now on, we travel with greater caution. Double watches at night, scouts ranging further ahead during the day. Harry nodded, understanding the implications. Should I limit my magical practice? If it creates disturbances Mormonar can detect. Gandalf believes the opposite, Aragorn replied. Your controlled use of magic may actually help stabilize your connection to both worlds, making you less of a beacon. It's the untamed outbursts that create the greatest ripples. This aligned with what Harry had experienced. His deliberate spellcasting felt contained, focused, while his emotional magical explosions seemed to disturb the energies around him far more dramatically. Get some rest, Aragorn advised. I've assigned you to third watch with Arwen. Harry nodded and returned to the main camp, where dinner preparations were underway. The company had fallen into efficient routines, rangers and elves working together with the seamless coordination of experienced travelers. Later that night, Harry joined Arwen for their watch shift, both of them taking positions on a rocky outcropping that provided clear views of the surrounding terrain. The night was clear but moonless, the landscape illuminated only by starlight, sufficient for Arwen's elven vision but challenging for Harry's human eyes. Lumos, he whispered, his broken wand producing a soft glow that he quickly shielded with his hand to prevent it broadcasting their position too widely. Another remembered spell? Arwen asked quietly. Harry nodded. One of the simplest, apparently. Creating light. He adjusted his hand to control the illumination. Useful for a night watch, at least. They settled into watchful silence, scanning different sections of the terrain methodically. After perhaps an hour, Arwen spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. Your dreams have changed, she observed. You no longer cry out in your sleep. Harry glanced at her, surprised. You've noticed? Elves require less rest than humans, she reminded him with a slight smile. I observe much during the quiet hours of camp. The dreams haven't stopped, Harry admitted. But they've evolved. Less chaotic terror, more like memories trying to surface. I see faces, places, hear fragments of conversations. You're past reaching for you, Arwen suggested. As the barrier between worlds thins, perhaps your connection to your original life strengthens as well. Perhaps. Harry wasn't entirely comfortable with this possibility. Though I'm not sure how much of that life I want to reclaim. From what little I've learned, I was marked for violence from infancy. Yet you were clearly loved, Arwen countered. Your mother's sacrifice speaks to that. Harry couldn't argue with this point. The vision of the red-haired woman standing protectively before him had awakened emotions he couldn't fully process, grief for a love he'd experienced but couldn't remember, wonder at the magic powerful enough to save him across worlds. I keep thinking about what Jenkins said, he confessed after another silence. About my name being in some book at Hogwarts, this wizarding school. That somewhere in that other world, there's a place that expected me, that might still expect me. It troubles you? Arwen asked gently. It makes me wonder, Harry clarified. About the life I might have had. The person I might have become if Aragorn hadn't found me in the Trollshaws. Such thoughts are natural, she assured him. But remember, Harry, the life you've lived here has value and meaning regardless of what might have been. The choices you've made, the skills you've developed, the bonds you've formed, these are no less real for having occurred in a world not of your birth. Her wisdom, as always, provided perspective that helped settle his conflicted thoughts. Before he could thank her, however, a movement in the darkness caught his attention. There, he whispered, extinguishing his wand light with a quick knocks and pointing toward a ridge approximately 200 paces from their position. Arwen narrowed her eyes, her elven sight piercing the darkness more effectively than Harry's. Something moves against the starlight, she confirmed. Too large for a fox or wildcat. Harry reached for his bow, knocking an arrow silently as he strained to make out details in the gloom. The shape moved again, bipedal but with an odd, lurching gait unlike any human or orc. I don't recognize its movement pattern, he murmured. Not like any creature I've tracked before. Nor I, Arwen agreed, her hand moving to her own weapon. And I have tracked the beings of Middle-earth for 2,000 years. The implication was clear, this might be something from beyond Middle-earth, a creature that had crossed through the weakening barrier between worlds. Should we alert the camp? Harry asked, keeping his arrow trained on the mysterious figure. Before Arwen could respond, the creature turned, and even in the dim starlight, Harry caught a glimpse of its face. Pale, hairless, with elongated features that seemed more skull than flesh. It raised its head, as if testing the air, then turned directly toward their position. It senses us, Arwen whispered. The creature let out a sound that chilled Harry's blood, not a howl or screech, but a rattling, sucking inhalation that seemed to draw the very warmth from the air around them. Immediately, an unnatural cold spread across the hillside, frost forming visibly on nearby rocks and vegetation. Wake the others, Harry decided instantly. This is no natural being. Arwen slipped away toward camp while Harry maintained his position, arrow ready. The creature began moving toward him with increasing speed, its rattling breath growing louder. As it drew closer, Harry felt a creeping dread unlike anything he'd experienced before, not just fear, but a profound despair that seemed to leach hope and happiness from his very soul. The sensation triggered another flash of recognition. A word formed in his mind, rising from buried memory, Dementor. Without conscious thought, Harry lowered his bow and raised his broken wand instead. The creature, the Dementor, closed the distance with unnatural speed, hovering above the ground now, its tattered black robes billowing around it despite the still air. Harry tried to recall the appropriate spell, but panic clouded his mind. The Dementor drew closer, the cold intensifying until his breath came in visible puffs. Worst of all, the despair deepened, dragging horrific images into his consciousness, his mother's screams, green light, high laughter. Harry! Aragorn's voice cut through his paralysis. His father charged up the hillside, sword drawn, with Elladan and Halbarad close behind. The Dementor turned toward the newcomers, seeming to hesitate momentarily before drifting toward Aragorn instead, perhaps sensing a more immediate threat. Something snapped inside Harry at the sight of the creature advancing on his father. Through the fog of dread and despair, a spell surfaced, complex, powerful, and desperately needed. Expecto Patronum. He shouted, pouring every positive emotion he could muster into the incantation, his life with Aragorn, the family he'd found among the Rangers, the peace of Rivendell, Arwen's friendship. A burst of brilliant silver-white light erupted from his broken wand, coalescing into a radiant animal form that bounded toward the Dementor. A stag with magnificent antlers, glowing with inner light, charged the dark creature fearlessly. The Dementor recoiled with another chilling rattle, retreating before the light of the Patronus. The stag pursued relentlessly, driving the dark entity back across the hillside and eventually into the distance until both disappeared from sight. Harry stood trembling, his wand arm still extended, overwhelmed by what had just occurred. The spell had come to him completely formed, incantation, wand movement, and most importantly, the emotional focus required to power it. What manner of creature was that? Eladan demanded, reaching Harry's side. And what light beast did you summon against it? A Dementor, Harry answered automatically, the knowledge flowing freely now. A being that feeds on happiness and hope, leaving only despair. The spell, the Patronus charm, is the only effective defense against them. You remember this from your world? Aragorn asked, studying Harry closely. I think so. Harry lowered his wand slowly. But I don't understand how. I was an infant when I left, I couldn't possibly have learned such complex magic. Memory is stranger than we understand, Gandalf said, arriving with the rest of the now awakened company. Particularly when magic is involved. Your connection to your original world grows stronger, knowledge that should be inaccessible is finding its way to you. Arwen approached Harry with concern. You're pale as death. These Dementors, they affect you more severely than others. They force you to relive your worst memories, Harry explained, still shaking slightly. I heard my mother's final moments, her screams as Voldemort murdered her. Aragorn placed a steadying hand on Harry's shoulder, his presence an anchor against the lingering effects of the Dementor's influence. The stag, Harry continued, looking to Gandalf. My Patronus took that specific form. Does that mean anything? Gandalf's bushy eyebrows rose slightly. In many magical traditions, a Patronus or spirit guardian reflects something significant about the caster, perhaps an aspect of your true self, or a connection to someone important in your life. We should return to camp, Aragorn decided practically. Strengthen our defenses in case more of these Dementors appear. Dawn is still hours away. They retreated to the campsite, where Gandalf established additional magical protections while the elven warriors took up defensive positions around the perimeter. Harry accepted a piece of chocolate from Arwen's provisions, surprised to find it immediately counteracted the Dementor's lingering effects, another piece of knowledge surfacing from his subconscious. These creatures crossing from your world to ours. Halbarad said grimly as they gathered around the rekindled campfire. It confirms the barrier weakens more rapidly than we feared. And suggests Mormonar actively works to bring such beings through, Eladan added. Perhaps as sentries or guardians for his territory. If Dementors are here, other creatures may have crossed as well, Harry warned. My memories are fragmented, but I sense there are many dangerous beings in my original world, some perhaps even worse than what we just encountered. This sobering thought settled heavily over the company. Their journey north had just become significantly more perilous, with threats they could neither fully anticipate nor understand. We should continue at first light, Aragorn decided after conferring briefly with Gandalf. But with increased caution. No one travels alone, even within sight of camp. Harry nodded agreement, his mind still processing the implications of the night's events. The Dementor's appearance confirmed that the barrier between worlds had deteriorated dangerously. Worse, his reaction to the creature, the overwhelming despair that had nearly paralyzed him, suggested he might be particularly vulnerable to certain threats from his birth world. Yet the Patronus charm had worked perfectly, despite his never consciously learning it. The magnificent silver stag had driven the Dementor away effortlessly, suggesting Harry's magical abilities from his original world might be accessible on some deeper level than he'd realized. As the company settled back into watch rotations for the remainder of the night, Harry found himself unable to return to sleep. Instead, he sat near the fire, his broken wand in hand, contemplating all that had occurred. Gandalf joined him after completing the protective enchantments, settling his aged frame onto a nearby rock with a soft grunt. The Patronus you summoned, the wizard began without preamble. An impressive display of magic unknown to Middle-earth. Harry nodded. It felt natural. As if I'd cast it 100 times before, though that's impossible. Perhaps not entirely impossible, Gandalf mused, tamping fresh pipeweed into his pipe. Time flows differently between worlds sometimes. What was 17 years here might have been something else entirely there. You think time passed differently in my original world? Harry asked, startled by the possibility. It's merely speculation, Gandalf cautioned. But the knowledge you access seems beyond what an infant could possess. It suggests complications in how you exist between realms. Harry considered this troubling idea. Jenkins mentioned my name remains in some book at Hogwarts, as if I'm still expected there despite 17 years passing. Further supporting my theory, Gandalf nodded, puffing his pipe alight. Your physical self has grown here in Middle-earth, but perhaps some aspect of your being, your soul or magical essence, maintains connections to your original timeline. The concept was difficult to grasp, yet somehow rang true. Harry had always felt slightly out of step with the world around him, even beyond his obvious differences. If Gandalf was correct, this disconnection might be far more literal than he'd imagined. Does this mean, Harry began hesitantly, that if I were to somehow return to my birth world, I might find it as I left it? Not 17 years later. Gandalf blew a thoughtful smoke ring before answering. I cannot say with certainty. Such crossings between worlds are rare and poorly understood. But the possibility exists that your return would follow different rules than your departure. The implications were staggering. Harry had built his identity around being a Ranger of the North, Aragorn's adopted son, a man of Middle-earth with unusual abilities. The thought that another life, another version of himself, might still be possible somewhere else threatened the foundations of that identity. This changes nothing about our current task, Gandalf added, correctly reading Harry's troubled expression. Whatever connections exist between you and your original world, Mormonar's threat to Middle-earth remains immediate and grave. Harry nodded, grateful for the wizard's grounding perspective. You're right. Philosophical questions about my existence can wait until after we've prevented a corrupted Maya from tearing reality apart. Gandalf chuckled softly, the sound unexpectedly warm in the tense atmosphere of the camp. Well put, young Harry. Well put indeed. The company resumed their journey northward at first light, moving with increased vigilance after the previous night's encounter. Scouts ranged ahead and to the sides, watching for any signs of dementors or other unnatural creatures. The landscape gradually changed as they traveled, becoming harsher and less hospitable. Lush forests gave way to scattered woodlands, then to rocky hills with sparse vegetation. Game became scarcer, settlements non-existent. They had entered the fringes of the northern waste, where few had reason to venture. For days after the Dementor encounter, as they made camp in the shelter of a rocky outcropping, one of the ranger scouts returned with disturbing news. A structure ahead, he reported to Aragorn and Gandalf. Unlike any ruin of Middle-earth I recognize. Approximately half a day's journey northeast. What manner of structure? Gandalf inquired sharply. Stone walls, partially collapsed. A central tower still stands, topped with a strange weather vane that moves without wind. The ranger's expression revealed his unease. The stones themselves seem wrong. They shift colors when not observed directly. Harry exchanged glances with Arwen. Another manifestation from my world? Possibly, Gandalf agreed. Or a hybrid, something from your realm attempting to materialize in ours, creating architectural impossibilities in the process. Aragorn considered their options. We could bypass it, continue northward on a different path. Or investigate, Harry countered. If it's connected to my world, it might contain information or objects that could help us understand what we're facing. A brief council was held among the company's leaders. Eventually, they decided that a small scouting party would approach the mysterious structure while the main company made camp in a defensible position nearby. I should go, Harry insisted when the scouting party was being selected. I'm most likely to recognize anything from my world. Agreed, Aragorn nodded. But not alone. Myself, Harry, Arwen for her sense of magical energies, and Halbarad for his tracking skills. And myself, Gandalf added firmly. If this structure represents a thinning between worlds, my expertise may prove necessary. With the decision made, they set out at dawn the following day, leaving the main company behind in a sheltered valley. Their path took them across increasingly barren terrain, rocks and dust with little vegetation, under a sky that seemed oddly muted, as if the very colors of the world were less vibrant in this region. By mid-morning, they crested a ridge and saw their destination in the valley below. Harry felt an immediate jolt of recognition despite never having seen the place before. Hogwarts, he breathed, the name coming unbidden to his lips. The structure before them was indeed reminiscent of the castle from his dreams and visions, but horribly distorted, as if someone had attempted to reconstruct it from a half-remembered description. Towers rose at impossible angles, staircases led to nowhere, and portions of the walls seemed to flicker in and out of existence when viewed from the corner of one's eye. "This is not fully present in our reality," Gandalf observed grimly. "It exists partially in your world, partially in ours, a dangerous overlap." "How is this possible?" Aragorn asked, studying the uncanny structure with a tracker's analytical eye. "The barrier thins," Arwen answered softly. "Places of strong magic in Harry's world begin to bleed through into corresponding locations in ours. And vice versa, I imagine," Gandalf added. "Somewhere in Harry's original world, a version of this landscape may be experiencing similar phenomena, glimpses of Middle-earth manifesting unexpectedly." They descended cautiously toward the structure, weapons ready and senses alert. As they drew closer, Harry felt the familiar tingling sensation that accompanied his magical outbursts, though more controlled and external, as if the air itself carried a current of power. "My scars prickling again," he reported quietly. "Not painful, but definitely responding to something here." "Proceed with extreme caution," Aragorn instructed. "Touch nothing unless absolutely necessary." The entrance to the castle fragment stood open, great wooden doors hanging askew from stone hinges. Beyond lay a hallway that seemed to extend farther than the exterior dimensions of the building should allow. "Spatial distortion," Gandalf murmured. "The internal space doesn't match the external boundaries." They entered slowly, weapons drawn. Inside, the contradictions became even more apparent. Torches lined the walls, burning with flames that gave light but no heat. Portraits hung in gilded frames, their subjects moving subtly when not observed directly. Staircases shifted position with grinding stone sounds at irregular intervals. "This is a school," Harry realized, fragments of memory connecting. "Hogwarts is a school for wizards and witches. These are classrooms." He gestured toward doors lining the corridor. "A place of magical learning," Gandalf mused. "Perhaps drawn into our world because of your connection to it, Harry. You would have studied here had you remained in your birth world." The thought was simultaneously fascinating and unsettling. Harry could almost imagine himself in these halls, wearing the black robes he'd seen in his visions, learning to control the magic that had manifested so unpredictably throughout his life. They explored cautiously, finding classrooms with desks arranged before blackboards covered in partially visible writing, formulas and diagrams that faded in and out of legibility. One room contained shelves of ingredients Harry instinctively identified as potion components, though many were species unknown to Middle-earth. In another chamber, they discovered a sight that stopped them all in their tracks. A great mirror stood against the far wall, its golden frame inscribed with words in a language Harry somehow understood despite never having studied it, Eris stra eru oit uba kafru oit unwosi. "I show not your face but your heart's desire," he translated automatically. "A dangerous artifact," Gandalf warned, stopping them from approaching closer. "Such objects rarely offer truth without cost." Despite the warning, Harry felt drawn toward the mirror. Before anyone could stop him, he stepped before its reflective surface, and gasped at what he saw. Not his own reflection, but a scene of impossible clarity, himself standing between two groups of people. On one side, a red-haired woman with his green eyes and a man with unruly black hair and glasses, his birth parents, somehow instantly recognizable despite having no conscious memory of them. On the other side, Aragorn and the rangers who had been his family throughout his life. Neither group conflicted with the other, they stood together as one extended family, united across worlds. "What do you see?" Aragorn asked quietly, noting Harry's transfixed expression. Both my families, Harry answered, his voice thick with emotion. Together, as if the barriers between worlds never existed. Aragorn placed a steadying hand on his shoulder, drawing him gently away from the mirror. Such visions show possibility, not certainty. Remember that. Harry nodded, tearing his gaze from the compelling image with effort. It's showing me what I want most, connection to both parts of myself without having to choose between them. A natural desire, Arwen said compassionately. But one that may not reflect the choices reality will demand. They continued their exploration, eventually reaching what appeared to be a great hall with 4 long tables, the room Harry had seen repeatedly in his visions. Above, the ceiling showed not stone but an image of the sky outside, though with weather patterns that didn't match the actual conditions. The Great Hall, Harry identified it. Where students gather for meals and announcements. At the far end, on a raised platform, stood another table perpendicular to the others, presumably for teachers. Behind this, instead of the expected wall, a swirling portal of energy pulsed with multicolored light. The barrier is particularly thin here, Gandalf observed, approaching the phenomenon cautiously. We're seeing directly into the corresponding location in Harry's world. Through the portal, they could glimpse the actual Great Hall of Hogwarts, intact and occupied, unlike the fragmentary version they stood in. Figures moved about on the other side, seemingly unaware of being observed. They can't see us, Arwen noted. The connection appears one-directional at present. Harry stared transfixed at the scene beyond the portal. Students in black robes with color trim moved between tables set for what appeared to be a feast. Teachers supervised from their high table. All proceeded normally, as if unaware that their reality leaked into another world. Then Harry noticed something that sent a chill through him. At one of the tables, a student looked up, directly at the portal, directly at Harry. A boy who appeared roughly Harry's age, with white blonde hair and pointed features. The boy's eyes widened in shock, and he nudged companions on either side, pointing toward what must have appeared to them as an anomaly in their hall. They see us now, Harry warned. At least, some of them do. We should withdraw, Aragorn decided immediately. Our presence may be strengthening this connection merely by observing it. Before they could retreat, however, a figure on the other side approached the disturbance, an elderly wizard with a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles, wearing magnificent purple robes. Harry recognized him instantly from his visions, an important figure at Hogwarts, someone significant. The old wizard studied the portal with remarkable composure, eventually raising his wand toward it. His lips moved in what appeared to be an incantation, and the portal flickered, stabilizing somewhat. Then, to Harry's astonishment, words formed in the air between the worlds, glowing letters hanging suspended in the space between them, "Who comes from beyond the veil?" Harry looked to Gandalf and Aragorn, uncertain how to respond. After a brief hesitation, Gandalf nodded encouragement. "I am Harry," he called toward the portal. "Son of Aragorn, Ranger of the North." The elderly wizard on the other side showed visible shock at this response, conferring rapidly with a severe-looking witch who had joined him. After a moment, new words formed, Harry Potter. The confirmation that Jenkins had spoken truth, that he was indeed known in that world, sent a wave of disorientation through Harry. Still, he answered truthfully. "I was once, perhaps. I've been Harry of the Dunedain since infancy." The portal flickered violently at this exchange, the connection clearly straining under the direct communication. The elderly wizard appeared to be working complex magic to maintain it, his wand moving in intricate patterns. The veil thins dangerously. Dark forces work to breach it completely. "Yes," Harry confirmed. "A being called Mormonar seeks to merge our worlds for his own power." The wizard's expression grew grave at this information. He conferred again with his colleagues before sending one final message: the breach must be sealed, not widened. Find the anchor point. Remember your true name and power, Harry Potter. We will work from our side. With that, the portal contracted violently, shrinking to a pinpoint before vanishing completely. The great hall around them began to shimmer and fade as well, sections of wall and ceiling becoming transparent, then disappearing altogether. "The manifestation collapses," Gandalf announced urgently. "We must leave immediately." They ran from the disintegrating structure, stones vanishing around them as they raced through corridors that grew increasingly insubstantial. They reached the entrance just as the upper floors disappeared completely, sprinting away from the building as it folded in upon itself like a house of cards. Within minutes, nothing remained of the castle fragment, just bare earth where it had stood, with no evidence of the impossible structure that had briefly bridged two worlds. What was that? Halbarad demanded once they'd reached a safe distance. "That old man, he knew you." "Albus Dumbledore," Harry said automatically, the name surfacing from memory. "Headmaster of Hogwarts. And yes, he apparently knows who I am, or who I would have been had I remained in that world." He spoke of an anchor point, Arwen recalled. "Something that must be addressed to seal the breach between worlds." "And he mentioned your true name and power," Aragorn added, studying Harry with concern. "As if your identity there holds significance beyond the ordinary." Harry touched his scar absently, recalling Jenkins' words about being famous in the wizarding world, the boy who lived, who had somehow defeated a Dark Lord as an infant. "I think I understand now," he said slowly. "My scar isn't just a mark from the spell that failed to kill me, it's a permanent connection between worlds, created at the moment I was transported here. I'm literally the anchor point Dumbledore mentioned." "Which explains Mormonar's interest in you," Gandalf concluded grimly. "Not merely as a curiosity or potential ally, but as the linchpin in his plan to merge realities." "What did Dumbledore mean by sealing rather than widening the breach?" Halbarad asked practically. "I believe he works to repair the barrier from his side, while warning us to do the same from ours," Gandalf explained. "Rather than exploit the weakening boundaries as Mormonar intends." "And my true name and power?" Harry looked to the wizard for interpretation. Gandalf considered carefully before answering. "Names hold power in many magical traditions. By acknowledging both aspects of your identity, Harry of the Dunedain and Harry Potter, you might gain fuller access to abilities from both worlds. This could prove crucial in confronting Mormonar." This made a certain sense to Harry. He had spent his life suppressing his magical nature, viewing it as something separate from his identity as a ranger. Perhaps integration rather than separation was the key to both controlling his abilities and addressing the threat they faced. "We should return to the main company," Aragorn decided. "Share what we've learned and continue northward with all possible speed. If wizards in Harry's world now work to seal the breach, our window to confront Mormonar at his stronghold may be closing." They made their way back to camp, where their report caused considerable concern among the company. The direct communication with another world, confirmation that knowledgeable beings there were aware of the danger, added new urgency to their mission. That night, as they prepared to continue their journey at first light, Harry sat apart from the others, turning his broken wand over in his hands thoughtfully. After a while, Aragorn joined him, offering a cup of tea. "Your thoughts are distant," his father observed. "I'm trying to reconcile the two halves of myself," Harry admitted. "For 17 years, I've been your son, a ranger of the North. Now I discover I'm also this. Harry Potter. Someone significant enough that a powerful wizard recognized my name instantly across worlds." Aragorn considered this thoughtfully. "When I was 20, Lord Elrond revealed my true name and heritage, that I was Aragorn, son of Arathorn, heir to the throne of Gondor. Until then, I had known myself only as Estel, his foster son." Harry looked up, surprised. Though he knew Aragorn's heritage, he'd never considered the parallel to his own situation. "How did you reconcile those two identities?" he asked. "I came to understand that both were true," Aragorn replied simply. "Estel was not a false name or false life, it was one chapter of my story. Aragorn became the next chapter, building upon rather than replacing what came before." "And now you're both," Harry observed. Aragorn nodded. As you are both Harry of the Dunedain and Harry Potter. Neither negates the other, together they form the complete truth of who you are. The wisdom in this perspective helped settle some of Harry's inner turmoil. He didn't need to choose between identities or worlds, his unique position spanning both gave him strengths neither alone could provide. Thank you, he said simply. For everything. Whatever else I discover about my past or future, you will always be my father. Aragorn clasped his shoulder firmly, no words necessary to convey the depth of their bond. After a moment, he spoke again, his tone lighter. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow we continue into increasingly dangerous territory, and I need you alert. Harry nodded, setting aside his broken wand and settling into his bedroll. As sleep claimed him, his dreams once again showed him glimpses of Hogwarts, but this time, rather than disconnected fragments, he saw possibilities. Versions of himself moving through those halls, learning magical arts, facing challenges. Not a life lost, but a road not taken. And perhaps, somehow, a future still possible in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. Chapter 3, The Battle for Two Realms. The Black Tower loomed against the grey northern sky, a jagged obsidian spike that seemed to drink in the surrounding light. After 3 weeks of increasingly difficult travel, Harry's company finally beheld Mormonar's stronghold from a ridge 2 miles distant, close enough to see the dark energy crackling around its peak like corrupt lightning. Charming vacation spot, Harry muttered, passing the spyglass to Aragorn. Remind me why we came all this way again. His attempt at humor fell flat. The company had endured much to reach this desolate place, attacks from twisted creatures that belonged in neither world, weather that defied natural patterns, and landscapes that shifted unnervingly when not directly observed. 3 rangers and 1 elf had fallen along the way, their bodies committed to the cold northern earth with solemn ceremony. The barrier between worlds is paper-thin here, Gandalf said grimly, leaning on his staff as he surveyed the fortress. Notice how reality itself seems to ripple around the tower. Harry saw it, the air surrounding the structure wavered like heat rising from summer stone, occasionally revealing ghostly glimpses of something else superimposed upon the landscape. A forest where none existed. Stone walls that appeared and vanished. Flickers of a different sky. 2 worlds overlapping, Arwen confirmed, her voice troubled. The tower exists simultaneously in both realms. Eladan lowered his own spyglass with a frown. The approach is heavily guarded. Creatures of various kinds patrol in rotating patterns, some familiar, others entirely foreign to Middle-earth. I count at least 30 human sentries as well, added Halbarad. Likely more inside. Aragorn traced potential approach routes on the crude map they'd sketched during their journey. A frontal assault would be suicide. We need another way in. Perhaps there isn't one, Elrohir suggested practically. This Mormonar has had ample time to fortify against every conventional approach. Harry studied the tower thoughtfully, his mind turning over possibilities. What about unconventional approaches? The tower exists in both worlds simultaneously, right? Maybe there's a way to exploit that duality. Gandalf's bushy eyebrows rose with interest. What are you proposing? I'm not entirely sure, Harry admitted, but if the barriers between worlds are thinnest here, perhaps we could. I don't know, step from one to the other. Use the overlap to bypass outer defenses. A dangerous proposition, Gandalf cautioned. Crossing between worlds without proper preparation could prove fatal, or worse. We need more information before attempting anything so risky, Aragorn decided. First, we establish a secure camp and conduct proper reconnaissance. They withdrew to a sheltered valley a safe distance from the tower, establishing their base with the efficiency of experienced campaigners. Scouts were dispatched to observe the fortress from multiple angles, while Gandalf worked to establish magical protections around their camp. As evening approached, Harry found himself on a rocky outcropping with Arwen, watching the Black Tower through the gathering dusk. Even at this distance, he could feel its malevolent presence, a pressure against his scar that pulsed in time with the dark energy surrounding the structure. It calls to you, Arwen observed quietly. Harry nodded, rubbing his scar absently. Not with words, but intent. Like a beacon designed specifically for me. Mormonar knows you've arrived, she said. He's likely anticipated our presence for some time. Which makes our task even more impossible, Harry sighed. We're 17 warriors and a wizard against a fortress full of enemies, led by a corrupted Maya with access to magic from 2 worlds. Arwen's gaze remained steady on the horizon. History is shaped by impossible tasks accomplished against overwhelming odds, Harry. Your very existence here defies what should be possible. Her confidence buoyed his spirit somewhat. Over the weeks of travel, Harry's relationship with Arwen had deepened beyond student and teacher into a friendship he valued deeply. Her perspective, spanning thousands of years yet still maintaining hope, helped balance his very human doubts. I should check my supplies before tomorrow's scouting mission, Harry said, rising from his position. Aragorn wants us to get closer observations of the tower's eastern approach. Arwen nodded but remained where she was, her profile silhouetted against the darkening sky. I'll join you at camp shortly. Harry made his way back to their hidden encampment, where preparations for the next day's activities were already underway. He checked his weapons methodically, sword sharpened, bowstring waxed, arrows fletched, before turning his attention to his magical supplies. The broken wand responded more reliably now that he'd recovered more of his inherent knowledge. Daily practice had strengthened his control, allowing him to cast increasingly complex spells despite the wand's damaged state. He'd also created a small collection of potions based on fragmented memories, healing drafts, energy stimulants, and one experimental concoction designed to temporarily disrupt magical barriers. Your preparations progress well, Gandalf observed, approaching Harry's position by the small fire. Your facility with your birth world's magic grows impressively. Still feels like I'm fumbling in the dark half the time, Harry admitted. I remember spells and potions, but not their theory or limitations. It's like having a dictionary of a language without understanding its grammar. Yet you adapt and innovate, Gandalf countered, settling beside him with a grunt. Combining techniques from both magical traditions in ways neither world has seen before. This was true. Harry had discovered that certain elven focusing techniques Arwen had taught him could enhance his spellcasting, while conversely, some wizarding incantations could be adapted to work with Middle-earth materials in unexpected ways. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the camp's perimeter. Aragorn strode toward them with urgency in his movements, Elladan close behind with an expression of grave concern. Arwen hasn't returned, Aragorn announced without preamble. She should have been back over an hour ago. Harry stood immediately, alarm coursing through him. She was watching the tower from the eastern ridge. I left her there at dusk. We've checked that position, Elladan replied grimly. No sign of her, though there were indications of a struggle, displaced stones, broken vegetation. Could she have been captured? Gandalf asked, already reaching for his staff. It seems likely, Aragorn confirmed, his voice tight with controlled emotion. A scouting party found these nearby. He opened his palm to reveal 2 items, a silver elven brooch that Harry recognized as Arwen's and a small black stone carved with unfamiliar runes that pulsed with malevolent energy. A message stone, Gandalf identified the second object, his expression darkening. Commonly used by servants of darkness to communicate across distances. Can you read it? Harry asked urgently. Gandalf passed his hand over the stone, muttering words in a language Harry didn't recognize. The runes flared briefly before projecting a ghostly image above the stone, a hooded figure whose features remained in shadow. Rangers of the North, the figure addressed them in a voice that seemed to whisper and boom simultaneously. Your elven companion rests within my hospitality. Her continued well-being depends entirely on your next actions. Mormonar, Gandalf identified grimly. The figure continued, to the one called Harry Potter, son of Aragorn, bearer of the lightning mark, I offer simple terms. Present yourself at my tower's gate by tomorrow's noon. Come alone, and the elf maiden returns unharmed. Refuse, and I shall be forced to extract what I need from her in less pleasant ways. The message ended, the projection dissolving into mist that dissipated in the night air. It's a trap, Halbarad stated the obvious. Of course it's a trap, Harry agreed, already checking his weapons. But it's also our only way inside that fortress. He wants me, not Arwen. You cannot seriously consider surrendering yourself, Aragorn objected. Mormonar will never release Arwen regardless of what you do. I don't plan to surrender, Harry clarified. But this gives me a legitimate approach to the gate. Once inside, I can work to locate Arwen and create an opening for the rest of you to enter. Absolutely not, Aragorn's tone brooked no argument. We will not separate our forces, nor risk you falling into Mormonar's hands. There must be another way. A tense council followed, with various approaches proposed and rejected. The fortress seemed impregnable through conventional means, its defenses too numerous and varied for their small company to overcome directly. What if? Harry began hesitantly after a long debate. What if we use the weakness in the barrier to our advantage? All eyes turned to him expectantly. Mormonar has been strengthening the connection between worlds, right? Creating a situation where the two realities overlap around his tower. Harry leaned forward, his idea taking shape as he spoke. What if we could use that overlap to enter from an angle he doesn't expect? You're suggesting we attempt to cross between worlds, Gandalf realized. Use the thinned barrier to approach the tower through the corresponding location in your birth world. Exactly. Harry nodded eagerly. The tower exists in both realms simultaneously. If we could somehow step from one world to the other, then back again inside the fortress. Such a crossing would be extraordinarily dangerous, Gandalf cautioned. Even with the barrier weakened, moving between worlds requires immense power and precision. But not impossible. Harry pressed. Gandalf hesitated before answering. Not entirely impossible, no. Especially for you, Harry. Your connection to both realms might allow you to serve as an anchor for such a crossing. Then that's our approach, Harry decided. I'll go to the gate as Mormonar demands, alone, as specified. But not to surrender. I'll use my presence to thin the barrier further, creating a temporary passage for the rest of you to cross through. And if you cannot? Aragorn asked, his concern evident. Then I'm still inside the fortress and can search for Arwen while you find another way in, Harry replied simply. After much debate, a plan gradually formed. Harry would approach the tower at noon as demanded, carrying specific magical implements Gandalf believed might help manipulate the already weakened barrier. The rest of the company would position themselves at strategic points around the fortress, ready to exploit any opening Harry could create. This plan places too much weight on your shoulders, Aragorn told Harry privately after the council disbanded. If anything goes wrong. It won't, Harry assured him with more confidence than he felt. And even if it does, I've been training for this my entire life without knowing it. Both my ranger skills and my rediscovered magic have prepared me for exactly this kind of situation. Aragorn studied him with a mixture of pride and worry. When did you become so assured? I remember a boy who doubted his every unusual ability. I had an excellent teacher, Harry replied simply. One who showed me that courage isn't about fearlessness, but acting despite fear when something important is at stake. Aragorn clasped Harry's shoulder firmly, words unnecessary between them. After a moment, he spoke practically, get some rest. Tomorrow will test us all beyond measure. Sleep proved elusive despite Harry's exhaustion. His mind raced with fragments of spells and combat maneuvers, contingency plans, and worst-case scenarios. Most troubling were his thoughts of Arwen, her calm wisdom, her patient guidance, now endangered because of her connection to him. The responsibility weighed heavily, driving him to review his magical preparations repeatedly throughout the night. Dawn broke gray and cheerless over the northern wasteland. The company prepared in relative silence, each warrior checking weapons and armor while Gandalf made final adjustments to the magical implements Harry would carry. These focus crystals, the wizard explained, handing Harry 3 small gemstones, should help you sense the thinnest points in the barrier. And this. He produced a small silver instrument resembling a spinning top. This will vibrate when you're near a potential crossing point. Harry secured the items carefully. And to actually create the crossing? That will require your innate connection to both worlds, Gandalf replied gravely. Focus your intent through your wand while visualizing the barrier as a veil you can part. Your magical heritage combined with your physical presence in Middle-earth creates a unique fulcrum point. The explanation sounded frustratingly vague, but Harry nodded as if it made perfect sense. In truth, much of what they attempted relied on theoretical magic neither Gandalf nor Harry fully understood, an unsettling foundation for such a crucial mission. As noon approached, final preparations were made. Harry would approach from the south, making no attempt to hide his advance. The rest of the company would spread around the tower at precisely calculated distances, ready to converge when Harry created an opening. Remember, Aragorn said as they prepared to separate. Our primary objective is recovering Arwen. Confronting Mormonar directly may prove beyond our current capabilities. Understood, Harry agreed, though privately he doubted they could accomplish one without the other. If Mormonar truly needed Harry to complete his plans for merging the worlds, he wouldn't relinquish either Arwen or Harry without a fight. They clasped forearms in the ranger tradition before Harry turned toward the path that would lead him to the Black Tower's gate. The journey would take approximately an hour, time enough for the others to reach their positions undetected. The approach to Mormonar's stronghold proved easier than anticipated. No sentries challenged him, no creatures emerged to bar his path. The absence of resistance only heightened Harry's unease. Mormonar clearly wanted him to reach the tower unhindered. As he drew closer, the distortions in reality became more pronounced. The landscape flickered between barren wasteland and glimpses of another place entirely, a forest with a lake visible in the distance. Hogwarts grounds, Harry realized with a jolt of recognition. The tower somehow occupied the same spatial location as part of his birth world's magical school. One of Gandalf's crystals grew warm in his pocket, indicating a thinning in the barrier nearby. Harry paused, withdrawing his broken wand and the small silver instrument, which began spinning rapidly. Here, the overlap between worlds was particularly strong. Harry closed his eyes, focusing as Arwen had taught him to sense the energies around him. The barrier between worlds manifested in his awareness as a shimmering curtain of light, mostly solid but with areas of transparency where the two realities bled together. Revelio transitum, he whispered, combining a spell from his birth world with the elven focusing technique Arwen had taught him. The barrier became visible even to normal sight, a gossamer veil rippling in non-existent wind. Through it, Harry could see the Hogwarts grounds more clearly, students walking between classes unaware of the other world adjacent to theirs. This was promising. If the barrier was this thin around the tower's perimeter, creating a crossing point might actually be possible. Harry continued his approach with renewed determination, reaching the massive black gates shortly before the appointed hour. The gates stood 3 times Harry's height, forged from some metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No guard stood visible, though Harry sensed watching eyes from arrow slits above. Runes carved into the gate's surface pulsed with sickly green energy. Before Harry could announce his presence, the gates swung inward with a grinding of metal, revealing a courtyard beyond. A lone figure stood at its center, tall and hooded, radiating power that made the air around him warp perceptibly. "The boy who lived approaches at last," the figure called, his voice the same as from the message stone. "Or do you prefer Harry of the Dunedain? So many identities for one so young." Harry stepped cautiously through the gates, senses alert for any trap or ambush. "I prefer to know who I'm speaking with. Are you Mormonar himself, or merely another servant?" The figure laughed, the sound like ice cracking. "I am indeed Mormonar, though that name is but one I've worn through ages of this world. You might know me by others in your birth realm. He pushed back his hood, revealing features that sent a chill through Harry. The face might once have been handsome, but now appeared halfway between man and serpent, skin unnaturally pale, nose flattened to slits, eyes with vertical pupils that glowed faintly red. You look like him, Harry said before he could stop himself. Like Voldemort. An astute observation, Mormonar smiled thinly. Though the resemblance is not coincidental. When one communicates across dimensional barriers for years, a certain blending of essence occurs. He has taken on some of my attributes in your world, as I have acquired some of his in this one. The implications were disturbing. You've been working with Voldemort? All this time? Working with implies equality, Mormonar corrected. Let us say rather that I recognized a useful tool and provided guidance at key moments. His obsession with you served my purposes admirably. Harry's mind raced to process this information. The night he attacked my parents, that was your influence. Indirectly, Mormonar admitted, beginning to circle Harry with measured steps. I sensed a prophecy's power building and nudged events in a helpful direction. The resulting magical backlash tore the first significant opening between our worlds, one I've been widening ever since. Where's Arwen? Harry demanded, refusing to be drawn further into this disturbing revelation. Mormonar gestured casually toward the tower. The elf maiden is unharmed, merely contained. Her release depends entirely on your cooperation. Show me she's safe first, Harry insisted. With another gesture, Mormonar conjured a floating image in the air between them, Arwen in a circular chamber, apparently unconscious but without visible injuries. The room had no obvious doors or windows. Satisfied? Mormonar asked silkily. Hardly, Harry replied coldly. But it's a start. What exactly do you want from me? Your participation in a ritual, Mormonar explained, resuming his circling. Your unique position as a bridge between worlds makes you the perfect conduit for fully merging the realities I've worked so long to bring together. And if I refuse? Mormonar's expression hardened. Then I extract what I need forcibly, a process neither you nor your elven friend would survive intact. Harry feigned consideration while surreptitiously assessing his surroundings. The courtyard contained several points where reality seemed particularly thin, wavering areas where Hogwarts grounds showed through more clearly. One such point lay between him and Mormonar, another near what appeared to be a side entrance to the tower. Before I decide, Harry said carefully, I want to understand what merging these worlds would actually accomplish. What do you gain? Power beyond imagining, Mormonar replied, a fervent light entering his serpentine eyes. The magic of your birth world follows different rules, creates different possibilities. Combined with Middle-earth's more fundamental enchantments, one could reshape reality itself. Become greater than Vala or wizards ever dreamed possible. At what cost? Harry pressed. Millions of lives disrupted, two ecosystems forced together unnaturally. Change always requires sacrifice, Mormonar dismissed with a wave. The resulting world would eventually stabilize, those strong enough to adapt would thrive. Harry's hand closed around his broken wand in his pocket. The moment had come to act, but he needed to keep Mormonar talking while he prepared. And my role in this ritual? You stand at the exact center, Mormonar explained, warming to his subject. Your body, mind, and magical essence already span both worlds. The ritual simply expands that connection, using you as the template for a larger merging. While Mormonar spoke, Harry subtly positioned himself nearer to one of the wavering points in reality, his free hand finding the focus crystals Gandalf had provided. They grew warm to his touch, confirming the boundary's thinness here. An interesting proposal, Harry said, playing for time. But you're forgetting something important. Mormonar's eyes narrowed. And what might that be? I didn't come alone. In one fluid motion, Harry dropped to one knee, pressing the crystal against the ground while raising his broken wand skyward. Finestra Mundi, he shouted, a spell reconstructed from fragmented memories, modified with Gandalf's guidance to target the barrier between worlds. A blinding flash erupted from the point where crystal met earth. The air split vertically, a tear opening in reality itself to reveal the Hogwarts grounds beyond. Simultaneously, Harry sent red sparks shooting from his wand high into the sky, the signal for the rest of the company to attack. Mormonar howled in rage, sending a blast of dark energy toward Harry, who barely rolled aside in time. The magical attack struck the tear instead, causing it to widen dramatically. "Fool!" Mormonar snarled. "You've destabilized the barrier prematurely." Harry scrambled to his feet, casting a shield charm just as a second attack came his way. The magical barrier absorbed most of the impact, but the force still sent him sliding backward across the courtyard. Before Mormonar could press his advantage, arrows whistled from multiple directions. The rangers and elven warriors had seen Harry's signal and begun their assault. Most arrows seemed to warp or disintegrate before reaching Mormonar, deflected by some protective enchantment, but they forced him to divide his attention. Harry used the distraction to create a second tear in reality, this one nearer to the tower entrance. This opening formed more violently than the first, the edges crackling with unstable energy. "Aragorn!" Harry shouted toward the nearest opening. "Through here." Whether by extraordinary courage or because Harry's connection to both worlds somehow facilitated the passage, Aragorn was the first to leap through the tear, appearing in the courtyard with sword drawn. Elladan and Elrohir followed close behind, then several rangers in quick succession. Chaos erupted across the courtyard. Guards previously hidden in the tower rushed out to engage the intruders, while Mormonar himself conjured barriers of dark energy to contain the spreading tears in reality. Gandalf was the last to step through, his staff glowing with power as he immediately engaged in magical combat with several of Mormonar's sorceress servants. "Find Arwen!" Aragorn shouted to Harry above the din of battle. "We'll keep them occupied." Harry nodded, ducking under a guard's swing and retaliating with a stunning spell that dropped the man instantly. He fought his way toward the tower entrance, combining sword techniques Aragorn had taught him with spells that came increasingly naturally to his lips. Inside, the tower's architecture defied normal physics. Corridors bent at impossible angles, staircases led to the same floor they departed from, and doorways sometimes opened to entirely different sections of the structure. The disorienting design was clearly intended to confuse and trap intruders. "Point me Arwen," Harry whispered to his wand, adapting a direction-finding spell he'd recovered from memory. The broken wand rotated in his palm before pointing upward and slightly to the east. Harry followed its guidance, navigating the bewildering layout while dispatching the occasional guard with stunning spells or quick sword work. After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, Harry reached a spiral staircase that his wand indicated would lead toward Arwen. He ascended cautiously, aware that the most dangerous defenses likely guarded Mormonar's most important prisoner. At the stairway's top, he encountered his first significant obstacle, a door sealed with pulsing runes similar to those on the main gate. When Harry approached, the runes flared aggressively, sending painful jolts through his extended hand. "Magical lock," he muttered to himself. "Needs a specific counterspell or key." Harry considered his options. Breaking through with force might trigger additional defenses or harm Arwen inside. Instead, he examined the runes more carefully, noticing a pattern in their arrangement that seemed vaguely familiar from his recovered memories. Not Middle-earth magic, he realized suddenly. These are from my world, wizarding runes. The recognition unlocked another fragment of knowledge. Harry raised his wand, tracing a specific pattern while murmuring, Alohomra Maxima, an enhanced version of a basic unlocking charm. The runes flared briefly before fading. The door swung inward, revealing the circular chamber Harry had seen in Mormonar's projection. Arwen lay on a stone platform at its center, surrounded by a shimmering magical barrier. "Arwen!" Harry rushed forward, stopping short of the barrier. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, recognition dawning as she focused on him. "Harry. You shouldn't have come." It's what he wanted. I brought reinforcements, Harry assured her, examining the barrier for weaknesses. Aragorn and the others are fighting in the courtyard. We need to get you out of here and join them. This cage draws strength from both worlds' magic, Arwen warned, sitting up carefully. It adapts to whatever tries to breach it. Harry nodded, recognizing the sophisticated enchantment. Then we need something it doesn't expect. He reached into his pack, withdrawing the experimental potion he'd created, a mixture of Middle-earth herbs prepared using wizarding techniques. The resulting liquid didn't properly belong to either magical tradition, making it potentially effective against a barrier designed to counter known magic types. Stand back as far as you can, he instructed, uncorking the vial. When Arwen had moved to the platform's opposite edge, Harry flung the potion against the barrier. The liquid hissed dramatically upon contact, creating a rapidly expanding hole in the shimmering energy field. Before the barrier could adapt and regenerate, Harry reached through, grasping Arwen's outstretched hand and pulling her through. Ingenious solution, she commented as Harry steadied her. Combining alchemical traditions. I had an excellent teacher, he replied with a quick smile. Can you walk? We need to rejoin the others quickly. Arwen nodded, though Harry noticed her normally graceful movements were slightly unsteady. Mormonar's containment field drained some of my strength, but it will return. I can fight if needed. They made their way back through the tower's confusing layout, encountering surprisingly little resistance. Either most defenders had joined the courtyard battle, or Mormonar had never maintained a large internal garrison, relying instead on magical defenses and misdirection. As they neared the main entrance, a violent tremor shook the entire structure. Dust and small stones rained from the ceiling as the walls themselves seemed to warp momentarily. The barrier between worlds grows dangerously unstable, Arwen observed grimly. The tiers you created are expanding beyond control. Not just my doing, Harry corrected as they hurried downward. Mormonar's been weakening the barrier for years. Our assault just accelerated the process. They emerged into a courtyard transformed by battle. The fighting continued fiercely, with Aragorn and the elven warriors holding their own against Mormonar's guards. Gandalf and Mormonar himself were locked in magical combat near the center, energy of various colors crackling between them. Most disturbingly, the tiers in reality had indeed grown larger and more numerous. The largest now spanned nearly half the courtyard, showing not just Hogwarts grounds but other locations, a village Harry somehow recognized as Hogsmeade, a street lined with unusual shops, even what appeared to be a ministry building with robed officials running in confusion. Aragorn. Harry called, spotting his father dispatching a guard nearby. Aragorn turned, visible relief crossing his features at the sight of Arwen's safe. He fought his way toward them, Elladan covering his movement with precisely placed arrows. You found her, he said breathlessly upon reaching them. Thank the Vala. The situation deteriorates rapidly, Arwen reported, gesturing toward the expanding tiers. The barriers between worlds unravel as we speak. Gandalf believes Mormonar has lost control of the process, Aragorn explained, deflecting an attack from a flanking guard without breaking conversation. His decades of manipulation have weakened the boundaries beyond what even he anticipated. Our assault merely provided the final catalyst. Harry assessed the chaotic battlefield, noting that several of their company had fallen, though whether dead or merely wounded was unclear from this distance. Mormonar's forces seemed similarly diminished, but the corrupted Maya himself showed no signs of weakening in his magical duel with Gandalf. We need to end this quickly, Harry decided. Before the tear becomes irreparable. How? Aragorn asked practically. Gandalf already engages Mormonar directly, and even he struggles to gain advantage. Harry's gaze fixed on the center of the courtyard, where the largest tier pulsed with increasingly unstable energy. The anchor point, he murmured, remembering Dumbledore's message. Find the anchor point. Understanding dawned. My scar isn't just a connection between worlds, Harry realized. It's the original anchor point where the boundaries first broke. If I can somehow, I don't know, realign it. Close it from within. Such an attempt would be extraordinarily dangerous, Arwen cautioned. You exist in both worlds because of that connection. Sealing it might have unpredictable consequences for you. Harry met her concerned gaze steadily. What happens if we do nothing? No answer was necessary. All three could see the tears expanding by the minute, reality itself buckling under the strain of two worlds forced together unnaturally. I need to get closer to the main tear, Harry decided. And I'll need Gandalf's help to understand exactly what must be done. Aragorn nodded grimly. We'll clear you a path. What followed was a coordinated assault unlike anything Harry had experienced before. Aragorn led the remaining rangers in a wedge formation, cutting through Mormonar's guards with lethal efficiency. Arwen, despite her weakened state, provided crucial support with her elven blade, while Harry alternated between sword work and spellcasting as they fought their way toward the center of the courtyard. Gandalf, sensing their approach, redoubled his magical offensive against Mormonar, forcing the corrupted Maya to focus entirely on his own defense. This created the opening Harry needed to reach the largest tear in reality. Up close, the tear was even more disturbing, a jagged rent in the fabric of existence itself, edges pulsing with chaotic energy as two incompatible realities bled together. Through it, Harry could see Hogwarts Castle clearly now, its inhabitants reacting with alarm to the unprecedented magical disturbance occurring on their grounds. Harry! Gandalf called, maintaining his assault on Mormonar. The tear must be sealed from both sides simultaneously. Find your counterpart. My counterpart? Harry shouted back in confusion. What does that mean? Before Gandalf could answer, Mormonar broke free from their magical deadlock, sending the wizard staggering backward with a powerful blast. The corrupted Maya turned toward Harry, his serpentine features contorted with rage. You will not undo decades of work, he snarled, gathering dark energy between his hands. The worlds will merge as I have planned. Harry raised his broken wand defensively, but before either could attack, a new voice called from within the tear itself. Harry Potter. Harry turned in shock to see an elderly wizard in magnificent purple robes standing on the Hogwarts side of the dimensional tear, Albus Dumbledore, unmistakable even though Harry had only glimpsed him briefly during their previous encounter. The boundaries must be re-established. Dumbledore called across the divide. Your counterpart approaches. Before Harry could question what this meant, a figure appeared beside Dumbledore, a boy approximately Harry's age with unruly black hair, green eyes, and a lightning-shaped scar identical to his own. The boy stared at Harry with equal shock and fascination. Two Harry Potters, Mormonar laughed, the sound brittle with madness. How perfect. The paradox only strengthens the merging. Understanding crashed over Harry in a disorienting wave. Time had indeed flowed differently between worlds, as Gandalf had theorized. While he had grown up in Middle-earth with Aragorn, another version of himself, perhaps the original Harry Potter, had continued existing in the wizarding world, likely protected by whatever magical phenomenon had created the tear that brought Harry to Middle-earth as an infant. The paradox must be resolved. Gandalf shouted, regaining his footing. One soul cannot exist in two complete forms across worlds. Mormonar seized the moment of Harry's distraction to attack, sending a blast of combined dark energies, Middle-earth corruption interwoven with what Harry somehow recognized as the Cruciatus curse from his birth world. Harry barely managed to deflect it with a hasty shield charm, the impact still driving him to one knee. Harry! Aragorn rushed to his side, helping him up while deflecting a guard's attack without looking. Whatever you must do, do it quickly. The tower begins to collapse. He was right. The impossible architecture was failing as reality itself buckled, walls warping and floors rippling like disturbed water. Throughout the courtyard, smaller tiers had begun forming spontaneously, showing brief glimpses of various locations from both worlds. Harry locked eyes with his counterpart across the dimensional divide. Without words, a strange understanding passed between them. They were both Harry Potter, yet had lived entirely different lives. One raised by Aragorn as a ranger in Middle-earth, the other apparently attending Hogwarts as a wizard. "We must seal the tear together," Harry called to his counterpart. From both sides simultaneously. The other Harry nodded, raising a wand, whole and undamaged, that appeared identical to Harry's broken one. Somehow, Harry knew exactly what spell they needed, the knowledge rising from deep within his shared consciousness across worlds. "On 3, he called, raising his broken wand toward the tear. 1, 2. No. Mormonar howled, lunging toward Harry with inhuman speed. Aragorn intercepted him, sword flashing in a perfect arc that would have decapitated any normal opponent. Against the corrupted Maya, it merely forced him back momentarily, black ichor flowing from a wound that began healing almost instantly. 3. Harry shouted. Dimensio Reparo, both Harrys called simultaneously, the spell seemingly created spontaneously between them, drawing on their shared essence across realities. A blinding golden light erupted from both wands, connecting through the tear in reality. Where the beams met, the edges of the tear began knitting together, reality repairing itself from the contact point outward. Mormonar screamed in fury, unleashing a torrent of dark magic against Harry. This time, Arwen stepped between them, summoning what appeared to be pure elven light that formed a temporary barrier against the corrupted energy. "Continue the spell," she urged, visibly straining to maintain the protection. "We cannot hold him much longer." Harry poured everything he had into maintaining the connection with his counterpart. Their shared magic worked systematically to repair the dimensional tear, closing it inch by inch. Through the diminishing opening, he could see Dumbledore and other Hogwarts staff supporting his counterpart's efforts from their side. As the tear shrank, Harry felt a strange sensation, as if parts of himself were being pulled in opposite directions. Memories not his own began flooding his consciousness: a cupboard under stairs, a giant named Hagrid, friends called Ron and Hermione, confrontations with a reborn Voldemort. "The paradox resolves itself," Gandalf observed, having fought his way to Harry's side. "As the worlds separate properly, your shared consciousness divides as well." "What does that mean for me?" Harry gasped, struggling to maintain the spell despite the disorienting influx of foreign memories. "You must choose," Gandalf replied gravely. "As the tear closes completely, your essence must commit fully to one world or the other. You cannot exist in both any longer." The implication hit Harry like a physical blow. He would have to choose: remain in Middle-earth as the ranger he had always been, or return to the wizarding world and the life that might have been his. Through the now small opening, his counterpart seemed to realize the same thing, their eyes meeting in shared understanding across the diminishing divide. "Harry!" Aragorn called, still fighting to keep Mormonar at bay alongside Eladan and Elrohir. "Whatever happens, know that you will always be my son." The tear had shrunk to barely the size of a doorway now, the repair spell nearing completion. As it closed, Harry caught final glimpses of the world he might have known: Hogwarts Castle, Dumbledore's kind but grave expression, his counterpart's questioning gaze. For a brief, tempting moment, Harry saw two more figures appear beside his counterpart, a red-haired woman and a man with glasses and unruly black hair. His birth parents, somehow visible across the dimensional boundary, their expressions filled with love and longing. "Your true family awaits," Mormonar hissed, having momentarily broken free from Aragorn's engagement. "Step through before it's too late. Reclaim the life that should have been yours." The temptation was powerful, to know his birth parents, to explore the magical heritage he'd only begun to rediscover, to see the world he was originally meant to inhabit. But Harry's gaze shifted to Aragorn, fighting valiantly despite exhaustion and injuries. To Arwen, who had taught him to embrace rather than fear his differences. To the rangers and elven warriors who had followed him on this impossible quest. In that moment, his choice crystallized with perfect clarity. "My name is Harry of the Dunedain," he declared firmly. "Son of Aragorn, Ranger of the North. My place is here." With renewed determination, Harry poured his remaining strength into completing the spell. The tear contracted rapidly, his counterpart's image growing dimmer as the boundaries between worlds re-established themselves properly. As the final opening began to close, Harry locked eyes with his counterpart one last time. An understanding passed between them, each would live the life meant for him in his respective world. The other Harry nodded in acknowledgement before the tear sealed completely with a thunderous crack that shook the entire courtyard. The moment the dimensional barrier restored itself, Mormonar howled in anguish. The corrupted Maya's form began to warp unnaturally, his carefully maintained connection to Voldemort severed by the repaired boundary between worlds. "What you've done cannot be undone," he shrieked, his body fluctuating between humanoid and something more monstrous. "I spent centuries planning the perfect merger." "Your planning ends today," Harry replied, raising his broken wand despite his near exhaustion. Now that the tear was sealed, he could focus fully on the immediate threat. Mormonar gathered what appeared to be all his remaining power into a final, desperate attack, a roiling mass of corrupted energy directed not just at Harry but at everyone in the courtyard. It would kill indiscriminately, friend and foe alike. In this moment of ultimate crisis, Harry found clarity. Drawing on everything he had learned from both worlds, the courage and discipline Aragorn had taught him, the magical control Arwen had helped him develop, the spells and powers he had recovered from his original heritage, he raised his broken wand one final time. "Expecto Patronum Maximus," he shouted, combining the Patronus charm with amplification techniques learned from Gandalf. The silvery stag that erupted from his wand was larger and more radiant than before, but it wasn't alone. Around it materialized a host of spectral rangers on horseback, their forms composed of the same silver-white energy. This hybrid creation, part wizarding Patronus, part Middle-earth legend, charged directly into Mormonar's attack. Light and darkness collided in a cataclysmic explosion at the courtyard's center. For a moment, the outcome hung in balance, corrupted energy pushing against pure light. Then, gradually, the Patronus began to advance, driving Mormonar's attack back toward its source. Seeing his magic failing, Mormonar abandoned the attack and tried to flee toward the tower. But the Patronus and its spectral companions pursued relentlessly, surrounding the corrupted Maya in a tightening circle of brilliant light. "No!" Mormonar's final cry echoed across the courtyard as the light engulfed him completely. When the radiance finally dimmed, nothing remained of Mormonar but a scorch mark on the stones and a lingering sense of cleansing. The Patronus and its companions circled the courtyard once in victory before fading gradually from sight. Silence fell over the battlefield. The remaining guards, seeing their master destroyed, threw down their weapons in surrender. The unnatural architecture of the Black Tower began crumbling, its impossible structure collapsing now that the magical forces maintaining it had dissipated. "We need to evacuate immediately," Gandalf announced, supporting himself heavily on his staff. "The tower will not stand much longer without Mormonar's power sustaining it." Harry nodded wearily, his strength nearly spent after the combined efforts of sealing the dimensional tear and defeating Mormonar. Aragorn appeared at his side, placing a supportive arm around his shoulders. "Can you walk?" his father asked, his own exhaustion evident beneath his concern. "With help," Harry admitted honestly. "Did everyone?" "We lost 3 more in the final battle," Aragorn reported grimly. "The others live, though many are wounded. Halbarad organizes their evacuation now." Together, they made their way from the collapsing fortress, helping injured companions and ensuring no one was left behind. By the time they reached a safe distance, the Black Tower was folding in upon itself like a house of cards, eventually imploding with a thunderous crash that sent dust billowing into the gray northern sky. They made camp a mile from the fortress ruins, tending to the wounded and allowing the exhausted warriors to rest before beginning the long journey home. Harry found himself sitting beside a small fire with Aragorn, Arwen, and Gandalf, all 4 too drained for much conversation but drawing comfort from each other's presence. "The barrier between worlds?" Harry finally asked Gandalf. "Is it truly repaired?" "More securely than before," the wizard confirmed. "Your combined spell with your counterpart did more than merely seal the tear, it reinforced the natural boundaries between realities. Such crossings should not be possible again, at least not in our lifetime." And my connection? My magic? Gandalf studied him thoughtfully. Your magic remains, as it has always been part of you. But its nature may change somewhat now that the direct connection to your birth world is severed. Time will tell exactly how it manifests going forward. Harry nodded, absently touching his lightning scar. It felt different somehow, still present, but no longer occasionally prickling or burning as it had throughout his life. You had the chance to return, Arwen observed quietly. To your birth world, your original family. I saw them, Harry admitted. My parents, I think. Just for a moment before the tear closed. Aragorn's expression revealed complex emotions, understanding of what such a glimpse must have meant to Harry, coupled with relief that he had chosen to remain. I won't pretend I wasn't tempted, Harry continued honestly. To know that life, to meet them, but when it came to the actual choice. He looked directly at Aragorn. I already had a father. A family. A purpose. Everything that matters to me is here in Middle-earth. Aragorn clasped his shoulder wordlessly, the gesture conveying what words could not. Besides, Harry added with a tired smile, it seems that world has its own Harry Potter. It doesn't need two of us causing trouble. This drew quiet laughter from his companions, a welcome relief after the tension and loss of the day. What will you do now? Gandalf asked after a comfortable silence had settled around their fire. Now that this particular destiny is fulfilled. Harry considered the question thoughtfully. Continue as a ranger, I suppose. That's what I've trained for all my life. He glanced at his broken wand, which had served him well despite its damaged state. Though perhaps I can find ways to use my magic more openly now, to help protect the free peoples of Middle-earth. A ranger with magical abilities would certainly bring unique skills to the Dunedain, Aragorn agreed, his pride evident. Before that, Arwen interjected, you should complete your training in Rivendell. Now that you've embraced rather than suppressed your abilities, there is much more you could learn about controlling and directing them effectively. Harry nodded gratefully. I'd like that. Though perhaps we could incorporate more practical applications this time. Less meditation with stones, more, I don't know, turning orcs into toads. Arwen's musical laughter lifted their spirits further. I believe we can find a balance between discipline and creativity. As night fell fully over their camp, Harry found himself contemplating all that had occurred. In the span of a few months, he had discovered his origins, developed abilities he'd suppressed for years, confronted a threat to multiple worlds, and ultimately chosen his path forward with clear conviction. The journey home would be long, the grief for fallen companions genuine, but there was also a sense of rightness to the outcome. Middle-earth was his home, had always been his home, regardless of where he began. The skills and knowledge he'd gained from his original heritage would serve him here, integrated into the life he'd built rather than replacing it. Under the stars of Middle-earth, surrounded by those who had become his true family, Harry of the Dunedain, once Harry Potter, found peace in the knowledge that he was exactly where he belonged. 5 years later Harry crouched in the underbrush, watching the orc encampment with practiced patience. Beside him, 2 young rangers in training waited for his signal, their expressions a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. Remember, he whispered, observation first. Count their numbers, note their weapons, identify the leaders. There are 17 visible, responded Virgil, the quicker of the 2 apprentices. For centuries, the rest gathered around 3 campfires. Good, Harry approved. And their armaments? Crude but effective, answered Hayter, the more analytical trainee. Mostly scavenged weapons, though the larger orcs near the central fire have better equipment, possibly from a raided armory. Harry nodded, pleased with their assessment. 5 years of serving as the Dunedain's master tracker and occasional combat instructor had proven surprisingly fulfilling. After Mormonar's defeat and the sealing of the dimensional breach, Harry had indeed completed his magical training in Rivendell before returning to ranger duties with his new abilities fully integrated into his fighting style. Now, he instructed the apprentices, we could engage them directly. Our skills would likely prevail against their numbers. But sometimes. He reached into his pack, withdrawing a small cloth pouch. Alternative approaches prove more efficient. Harry opened the pouch, revealing a fine powder with a faintly luminescent quality, one of many magical preparations he developed by combining Middle-earth herbs with wizarding techniques. Sleeping dust, he explained. When burned, the smoke induces unconsciousness in orcs and similar creatures for approximately 1 hour. Long enough to bind them for transport to the nearest settlement for judgment. The apprentices exchanged impressed glances as Harry prepared the substance for use. His reputation among the younger rangers had grown somewhat mythical over the years, the wizard ranger who had helped defeat a corrupted Maya and seal a breach between worlds. Harry found the exaggerated stories amusing but used his unusual status to emphasize the values Aragorn had taught him: courage, compassion, and putting the protection of the innocent above all else. With careful application of the sleeping dust via enchanted arrows shot precisely into each campfire, the orc band was subdued without a single sword being drawn. As the 3 rangers moved through the camp, binding unconscious enemies, Harry reflected on how much had changed since the confrontation at the Black Tower. His magic had indeed evolved, as Gandalf predicted. While he retained most spells from his original heritage, they had gradually adapted to Middle-earth's magical environment, becoming more aligned with the natural energies of this world. He could still cast specific incantations, but also developed more intuitive abilities similar to elven magic, communication with animals, enhanced healing, occasional glimpses of distant events. The broken wand had finally given out completely a year after Mormonar's defeat. Rather than mourning its loss, Harry had worked with elven crafters to create something new, a staff of malleable design that could function as walking stick, bow, or magical focus as needed. The unique hybrid matched his own nature perfectly. His scar remained, though it had faded to a thin white line that rarely drew attention. Occasionally, Harry would experience dreams of his counterpart in the wizarding world, brief, disconnected glimpses of a life parallel to his own. These visions grew increasingly rare with passing years, but left him with the comforting knowledge that both worlds continued on their separate paths, neither harmed by their brief intersection. With the orcs secured, Harry and his apprentices began the journey back to the ranger outpost where Aragorn awaited their report. The evening was clear and cool, stars emerging above the ancient trees of Eriador, the same stars that had watched over Harry's entire life in Middle-earth. "Master Harry," Virgil ventured as they walked. "Is it true you could have returned to your birth world when the tear between realities was closing? That you chose to remain here instead?" Harry smiled at the young ranger's curiosity. "That part of the story is true enough. Why stay?" Hayter asked bluntly. "From what we've heard, you could have been a powerful wizard there, perhaps even known your real parents somehow." "First," Harry corrected gently, "Aragorn is my real father in every way that matters. Second." He paused, considering how to explain the complex choice he'd made 5 years earlier. "Middle-earth is my home. Always has been, from the moment Aragorn found me as an infant. The skills, the knowledge, even the magic I possess, they mean nothing without purpose. And my purpose has always been here, protecting these lands and their people." The apprentices nodded thoughtfully, seemingly satisfied with his answer. As they continued toward the outpost, Harry gazed up at the evening star, its light reminding him of Arwen, who had returned to Rivendell after completing his magical training. Their paths still crossed occasionally, their friendship a valued constant in his life. Ahead, the lights of the ranger outpost appeared through the trees. Harry knew Aragorn would be there, perhaps recently returned from his own patrols or diplomatic missions. Despite their individual responsibilities drawing them in different directions, the bond between them remained unbreakable, father and son in heart if not in blood. Harry of the Dunedain, once called Harry Potter, quickened his pace slightly. Whatever strange magic had brought him to this world as an infant, whatever cosmic coincidence or divine plan had placed him in Aragorn's path that night in the Trollshaws, he remained grateful beyond measure for the life he'd found here. 2 worlds, 2 possible destinies, and he had chosen the one that truly felt like home. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.